I almost threw up in my mouth a little bit yesterday. I tried not to, and I don't think I did. You know, you get that kind of gag reflex and you think you might have thrown up in your mouth, but you don't actually do. I think I had that yesterday when I was watching Kansas Governor Laura Kelly's State of the State. She had her State of the State yesterday, and then you also had Mike Kehoe on the Missouri side do their State of the State yesterday. So Kansas and Missouri both starting their legislative sessions this week. So the governor does like the president does with a State of the Union. So I'm watching both of these and flipping through them and checking out, making sure I don't miss anything for today's show. And it was only a matter of time before Governor Kelly was going to mention the Chiefs jumping across the state line. And she said something that stood out to me above the rest. And no matter what you think about the move is not really the point of this commentary. The commentary that Laura Kelly made yesterday is classic economic development math nonsense that is not based in reality.
We were able to accomplish this amazing feat for two reasons. First, we made Kansas a place the Chiefs want to call home, with a strong economy, a strong workforce, strong communities, and of course, an extraordinary fan base. And second, because a bipartisan team of leaders in this chamber, along with the local officials we just recognized, and many members of my administration, worked together to make this happen.
Okay, all right, but let's pump the brakes there, Laura Kelly. Pump the brakes. We made the Chiefs an offer that they wanted to call us home. Someone who's in the know on these negotiations told me that basically what happened here is that at the 11th hour, going up against the deadline, that Thursday, Friday before the announcement on Monday when things really started to leak, the Chiefs went back to Kansas and they basically said, we need X, Y, and Z. Like, we need all of this. And the Chiefs were almost shocked that Kansas said, yeah, sure. So, yes, it's a lot about the 70% or upwards of 70% of the stadium that was going to be funded by the Star Bond. That's absolutely true. And that's obviously the biggest part of the deal. But, I mean, basically, whatever the Chiefs asked for in Kansas, the guys and gals would just come back and be like, yep, sure, whatever you want. I mean, they just gave it all up. And then the Chiefs were finally like, can we say no to this? We can't do it. So for Laura Kelly to be like, the Chiefs really wanted to call the state of Kansas home. It's like the 80-year-old guy with the 25-year-old girlfriend who's convinced that she's in it for the love. That's what it is. Okay, it's Bill Belichick and his little girlfriend prancing around, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. That's what this is. Laura Kelly is the old man billionaire with the 30-year-old girlfriend on his arm or her arm. So maybe for her, it's like the boyfriend, all right? Whatever you want to do. However you want to frame this thing, you get the point. And then when she goes on to say, they love our workforce and the fans, it's the same fans. It's the same group of people. The people in Kansas who are fans are going to be fans. The people in Missouri who are fans are going to be fans. It's the same people who are going to be fans. It's not Kansas versus Missouri. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about the Chiefs' kingdom. And that's all of us on both sides of state line. But the way Laura Kelly frames it, she makes it seem like, these fans on the Kansas side are really what drove the decision. No. And maybe some of you get caught up in this like Kansas versus Missouri thing. I don't. It's irrelevant to me. And it's a totally misinterpreted analysis of what just happened over the last few months or couple of years. And then she highlights the workforce. It's the same workforce as well. You think the Chiefs are going to fire a bunch of people that live in Missouri to hire people who work in Kansas and live in Kansas on like the corporate side for this corporate headquarters? It's all the same people. They're just shifting from Arrowhead to either Olathe or KCK. That's it. It's the same people. It's the same fans. It's more or less the same exact operation, plus some mixed use and apartments and maybe some other events. But man, and I'm watching Laura Kelly yesterday as she's giving the speech, and when she brings up the Chiefs, she's got Dan Hawkins, the Speaker of the House, behind her. She's got Ty Masterson behind her. They're the House Speaker and the Senate President. And I don't know if they just had an itch, but they started to kind of squirm in their seat a little bit. You know, you readjust yourself when you get a little uneasy. You know how that is. You're in a meeting, right? And you start to get a little nervous, so you just start like moving around a hair. You don't even know you're doing it. They both started to move around and squirm a little bit. And I was like, gosh. And you just laid this thing out there for her on a silver platter to take all the credit for. Way to go. And then on the Missouri side of the state line, you had Mike Kehoe. And listen, it's been a rough few weeks for Mike Kehoe, right? He didn't want to be the governor who oversaw the state when you lose the Chiefs. But he appears to be kind of full steam ahead. I'm trying to get him on the show this week if we can. It's not going to happen today. We'll have on our buddy Scott Faughn from the Missouri Times. No one knows Jeff City as well as Scott Faughn. He will be here at 9 o'clock on KCMO. But Mike Kehoe was very much focused on this idea of phasing out the income tax in Missouri. And it's a noble thing to want to do. Some of the most successful states, economically speaking, in this country obviously do not have a state income tax. Led by Florida. You can throw Texas in there. Wyoming's in the mix as well. I believe Tennessee is part of that group. There's about 7, 8 states that have no income tax, and they are some of the most successful states in America. So Mike Kehoe's like, hey, how do we do that? What can we do? Here's what he had to say yesterday during his State of the State.
If we are serious about building a foundation for growth, to compete rather than be complacent, then we must begin the work now to phase out and eliminate Missouri's individual income tax. You see, we can do both. We can maintain a balanced budget that supports essential services and pursue a tax policy that improves Missouri's competitiveness.
All right, that sounds good. He's got a problem, though. Missouri has been spending too much money, like all of these states have been spending too much money. Not every single state, but many states will brag about the surplus that they have had in recent years. The main reason that any state is sitting on a surplus, including Kansas and Missouri, is because of COVID money. These states got billions of dollars in COVID money back in 2020. And they just basically stockpiled it, and then most of them spent it. Now, some of them are still sitting on a decent surplus, but in Missouri, that revenue surplus that was nearly $8 billion a few years ago is going to be exhausted by the end of the upcoming fiscal year. So Mike Kehoe's in a weird spot where he's going to figure out how to try to phase out the income tax, which is, once again, something I'm a huge proponent of. But to do it, he's got to slow down spending. So the governor yesterday proposed $600 million in general revenue being spent in the current budget from his proposal for the coming years. He wants to cut $600 million. Those cuts will make room for increases in demands on general revenue due to the depletion of funds that were used to substitute for general revenue in past budgets. So he wants to slice about $600 million to then get to a place where you're fiscally more responsible, and then you can start phasing out the income tax. I'm a fan of it. But by the way, don't do it the way Brownback did in Kansas. At least he's acknowledging we've got to cut, because the problem on the Kansas side, when you talk to anybody who was involved in the legislature then, they will readily admit to you today, if they're being honest, that they cut too quickly and they did not cut enough spending. They cut the income tax too quickly and they did not rein in government like they needed to make this work. Because businesses don't just like magically get up and go. They don't see the headline in CNBC. Hey, look, Missouri dropped its state income tax. Let's pick up our massive operation and go from Alabama or California or Illinois to Missouri tomorrow. Like, that stuff takes time for any business of scale. So you have to let it go for a few years before you can tell whether or not it's going to be a success. And then, of course, you got to rein in the spending in the meantime to make up for it. Or you got to make the money somewhere else. So it's not something that can be done in a vacuum. It's not something that can be done just snap your fingers and go. Kansas tried that, and it failed colossally. And now, unfortunately, all the big government rubes out there always point to Kansas's failed experiment as like, this is why you can't cut the income tax. No, you can. You just have to do it right. And I believe in Mike Kehoe. I believe in his leadership. I think he will do it right. But the reality was, during the Mike Parson era into Mike Kehoe's first year last year, they were not as fiscally responsible in Jeff City as you would hope a ruby red state legislature would be. And now as they pursue this state income tax removal, I hope that they realize, boy, that's got to start, and it's got to start this year. Because all these states have been flush with cash, and they've overspent, and now the bills come and due. 913-408-7957 is how you join us. Text the show this morning at 614 on KCMO. Thanks for listening to us on 95.7 FM. Of course, we're always on the stream. Yes, the stream's back up and running this morning. It was back by about 7:30 yesterday, but no glitches to start the show. So we were in a much better spot on a Wednesday morning than we were yesterday, outside of the weather. I liked the weather yesterday better, John.
I like your insight on the brownback situation, you see, because people will holler, oh, the brownback, and that casts a cloud that people don't quite understand how it happened. But also saying, well, we just haven't tried it right, kind of rings a little weird. So you're better off selling the point of why it didn't work.
Yes, and Jake LaTurner at a Politics in a Pint before COVID, when he was the state treasurer, and I forget what he was running for, but we did a Politics in a Pint with him, and he was in the legislature at the time, and he laid it out perfectly.
I think he
remember.
was running for south of here, wasn't
yes,
he? The
yes.
district of Ottawa.
District 2, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what it was.
So, right, that's great information to remember and know when you hear these arguments.
Yep, exactly. We've got, speaking of Kansas, Roger Marshall's going to be here at 6:35. We'll talk about his credit card plan. He's going after the credit card companies. Trump's on board. Does it actually make sense? Roger Marshall will be here on that coming up in less than 20 minutes on KCMO. In the meantime, this tragedy in the Northland, my goodness, just horrible. We have more details on what happened in the shooting up north, and we'll share it with you coming up next on KCMO.
On Wednesday's Guy Benson show, our dear friend Riley Gaines on a major case before the Supreme Court on protecting women's sports, coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
We found out who the victim was and who the alleged shooter was in this terrible situation that happened up in the Northland. So we have found out that the man who was shot and killed yesterday, or Monday morning, was 41-year-old Chris Wells. Prosecutors have charged Jeffrey King in connection to this deadly shooting in the Northland. The 41-year-old father lived near Wells. It was a neighborhood dispute. This guy, King, apparently was just a menace up in the Northland. I mean, if you haven't seen the pictures on local news of this guy's home, he had trailers and boats and, just garbage all over his front lawn. It's like he was living in the front yard of his house. And as we've learned over the last 24 hours, this guy, Jeffrey King, was somebody who the neighborhood called 311 about all the time in Kansas City. There were multiple disputes and issues between this guy King and his neighbors. He was crude towards women. He would shine lights in people's homes. Obviously, a highly disturbed individual. And then as the allegation goes, this guy gets into an argument with Chris Wells on Monday morning, and Jeffrey King ends up shooting him 13 times and killing the father of 4 kids. 8 times in the back. And I saw this on a Facebook page yesterday that Chris Wells had posted here as recently as July on Facebook about the fact that KCPD and the city of Kansas City, Missouri was not doing enough about this guy King. Chris Wells tagged Mayor Lucas in a Facebook post on July 11th of last summer. And he writes here, "Boy, the city of Kansas City and KCPD are failing. They are letting this guy on 78th Street get away with whatever he wants." Now, this is in reference to Jeffrey King, who shot and killed this man, Chris Wells, who was posting about it on Facebook as recently as July 11th. He writes here, "You call 311 about cars that haven't moved since May. They tell you to call KCPD. Call KCPD, they tell you to call 311. Pass the buck. In the meantime, kids have to be affected. School buses, as simple as crossing a congested street, neighbors get terrorized. But it's okay because he's parked legally. Don't worry about the fact that people who live on this street can't park anywhere. New drivers are forced to find another way around to avoid one-lane traffic due to his cars taking up most of the street. Do your damn job," Chris Wells writes back in July. "He has already caused a car wreck. Are we waiting till someone gets seriously hurt? Come on, Kansas City, you have to do better. Kansas City and Mayor Lucas, is this how we are running the city? As a lifelong Kansas City resident, at this point, I can't wait to move out of this city. Do your job. First chance I get, I'll hit the city with and then he throws up a peace sign emoji." So this person, Jeffrey King, who was alleged to have shot and killed Chris Wells on Monday morning, was clearly a menace to the neighborhood, and as a result, a menace to Kansas City. And 311 didn't do anything about it. KCPD wouldn't do anything about it. City Hall obviously would not do anything about it. And when you think about what your local government is supposed to do during a time when local government has gotten bigger and fatter and juicier than ever, you look at whether it's Kansas City, whether it's Overland Park, you go around the metro, and cities have exploded in terms of how much money they've spent. And a lot of it is really in the wake of COVID and the money they had to spend and what they've done since then policy-wise. And they fail at the basics. That's what this is. This is an example of the Kansas City government failing at the very basics, and now a 41-year-old father of 4 is dead because of it. As the city gets set to ask you for your earnings tax money here coming up in April, and they tell you they need it for basic services, ask them what the heck they're doing when it comes to The basics like what Chris Wells was asking for. As a law-abiding, tax-paying resident in the Northland, who had not just him, it was not just personal beef between him and this guy, Jeff King. There were apparently dozens of neighbors who were fed up with this guy and the menace that he was to law-abiding, tax-paying residents in Kansas City, Missouri. And the people who are supposed to protect them did absolutely nothing and passed the buck every chance they got. At some point, leadership is going to have to pay a political price for all of this. And this is an example in the Northland in particular. And remember, we're a year and a half away from a mayor's race in Kansas City. There has never been a mayor from the Northland. And at a time when the Northland is the fastest growing, most booming part of Kansas City, it feels like a pretty interesting time to maybe explore that possibility and get the Northland the love that it deserves from the standpoint of economics, from the standpoint of public safety, and the love that for too long has been given to south of the river that north of the river has never received, but should be receiving by now. And this is an absolute tragedy, what happened to Chris Wells. There was a vigil last night right there on 78th Street to honor and remember his life and what he did for his neighborhood and his family after he was shot and killed by this guy, Jeffrey King, allegedly on Monday morning. And what an absolute tragedy it is. There is a Give in Kind fundraiser to help support the Wells family. We will share that on the KCMO Talk Radio social media pages as well, so you can see that and consider a donation there. We will be up in the Northland tonight in Liberty at 3 Halves Brewing. Myself and Keatsman will be there. There is still time to RSVP if you want to join us at KCMOTalkRadio.com. That is from 5 to 7 o'clock. Coming up next, Roger Marshall's going to be here. He's going after the credit card companies. He's leading the way on that. He'll share the details next.
from the nation's heartland. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, Roger Marshall, Kansas U.S. Senator, is going after the credit card companies. He's got a push for the Credit Card Competition Act, and it's one of the few things right now in Washington, D.C., that actually has bipartisan support. The president threw his support behind Senator Marshall in a post earlier this week on social media. The senator has been all over cable news talking about this and giving his 2 cents. He will join us momentarily on KCMO. But he was on Fox Business yesterday, and here's what Roger Marshall had to say.
Look, I'm always going to be out here fighting for hardworking Americans. I'm going to be fighting for Main Street over Wall Street. Look, 2 credit card companies work hand in glove. Them and about 5 banks control 80% of this industry. Because of that, Americans are paying 7 times more for swipe fees. These banks are charging 20 to 30% interest. You know, think about this. The average family back home carries $7,000 of credit through from month to month at a 30% interest rate. That's well over $100 a month. That's not fair. This monopoly, this oligomonopoly, is why this is happening. Desperate times call for desperate measures. If we can fight for hardworking Americans, I'm right behind President Trump on this one.
All right. Well, that right there was Senator Marshall yesterday on Fox Business Network. And there's a lot of people who are going to like the way it sounds. I have questions. I mean, Doc and I are on the same page probably 90% of the time. But this one I just have questions on. I don't know if it's actually going to have the end result that he wants it and that we all want it to have, right? Which is figuring out how to give people a better bang for their buck if they're carrying credit card debt. But the other part of me says, you know what? The best thing we can do is go out there and make sure that we have an economy and a government that is not devaluing the dollar every single day by printing money we don't have. That's the best way to keep people out of credit card debt, and that's the best way to make sure that the middle class can continue to survive and then thrive. Because the system we're creating is basically a K-shaped economy. If you do not own assets, you are going to be left behind in this economy. And by assets, I don't just mean a home. I mean, it could be stocks. It could be anything, right? But you've got to have things. You've got to have assets that are outperforming inflation. Because inflation, as much as the inflation number came in yesterday at 2.6%, and that was great. It was welcomed. It's still not at the 2% target that, of course, the Fed has been wanting for many years now. So this is obviously something that the Republicans in Congress would be well served to tackle. But nobody wants to touch this. So in the meantime, they keep printing money. They run $1.5 trillion deficits. And they devalue the dollar. They squeeze out the middle class. Those who are asset owners do well. Those who aren't continue to see their dollars become less and less valuable every single day. So that's the bigger picture. Just the head of the snake, I guess, is the credit card deal and these credit card companies and what exactly this is going to look like moving forward. But we hope to have Roger Marshall on here momentarily and get him on the show for a few minutes to talk about this because I think it's a noble cause in the sense of trying to help people who have a lot of credit card debt. But is this any different potentially from Joe Biden saying, basically, I'm wiping out student loans because I feel like it? That's my question. But at least this is Congress doing something about it and not just a president doing something via executive order. So if we can get Senator Marshall on momentarily, his folks say that he will be here soon. We will make that happen on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Pete, when banks give 1.5% interest on money, then they borrow from you and charge 30% when you borrow from them. It's a no-win for the consumer. Watch what happens to savings accounts and the rates on the saving accounts if the short-term 10% cap passes. Well, you tell me. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen. I'm also intrigued by Senator Marshall, who joins us on KCMO. All right, Senator, I know you're just hopping on here. You and I are simpatico on most things. I get the end goal here. I always have concerns when the government wants to dictate the private market. So why is this credit card act so important, and why do you think it can work and not be a classic version of the government putting itself somewhere it doesn't belong and actually making things worse?
Yeah, well, good morning, Pete, and I do appreciate the thought and the question. Our credit card bill increases competition. It's going to lower the cost of gas and groceries 1% to 2%. I'm a free market capitalist like you are, but when there's monopolies that are present that are putting the shaft to American consumers, then something needs to be done. Very briefly, there's 2 credit card companies, 5 Wall Street banks, controlling about 85% of the credit card business. Because of that, Americans are paying 7 times more in swipe fees than folks in the EU, and the interest that we're getting charged is 20 to 30%. That's predatory loans, right? So I think that the banks and the credit cards bite. One more point: the credit cards have a net profit margin. Visa and MasterCard, 45 and 55%. The bank's net profit margin is 20 to 30%. So they are screwing Americans. And in this day, when I have a significant number of young couples, young families, single moms that can't make ends meet, they have on average $7,000 of credit they're carrying over. They're getting charged 30% interest. They can't make it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I understand all of it. Is it a slippery slope to say the government should be upset with the profit margins of a private company, though?
I think when there's a monopoly, yes. And I wish the Justice Department had went in there and broke them up for whatever reason. That doesn't ever happen. Again, I'm always going to err on the side of Main Street. I'm going to err on the side of hardworking Americans. To heck with Wall Street banks. They're not doing anybody any good in Kansas. And I want to emphasize 2 things. Number one is what we do in our credit card bill is force competition. When Dick Durbin brought this to me, he wanted to put a cap on it like Europe and said, no, we won't do that. So all we're doing is forcing banks that in addition to having Visa or MasterCard as one of the networks to use on that technology for the swipe, they have to choose somebody else. It can't be from China. The bank gets to pick it. So I think it's the win-win situation. And by the way, there's not one bank or credit union that calls Kansas home that's from Kansas that'll be impacted. Any bank, credit union with less than $100 billion of access is exempted. So we're hoping to bring this market back to community banks, to community credit unions as well. So I think that was another thing I wanted. It was an exemption basically for community banks who I think are just doing an incredible job as well as the credit union.
So if your act were to pass, how do we, because you're right, I mean, more competition in any marketplace is good for prices. So how does this bill potentially bring more competition into the marketplace?
Right. So just like your debit card, if you pull out your debit card, if you're driving, don't pull them out. But you're going to see that there's several different ways to run those through the system, the network that does the technology. So when the bank issues the credit card, they can put Visa or MasterCard there on it, and then but they have to choose at least one other network. Now, already in Europe, they're doing this. In China, they're doing it. So don't let the bank tell you they can't do it. They're doing it on your debit card. They're doing it overseas as well. And then you, the customer, you're not even going to know. Just like in your debit card, you don't know which one, when you take it to the retailer, you don't know which one of those 4 or 5 networks are going to run that through it. And by the way, crypto's knocking on the door with this as well. And very soon, I think there'll be a crypto option on those credit cards.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Now, you mentioned the credit unions in Kansas. Do you want the credit unions to get into this game to help with competition, or are you saying that they just won't have any downside and there will be no impact on them?
Yeah, so I'm not as familiar with the credit unions. I assume that they're already issuing credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying that there's only one credit union in the country that has assets above $100 billion. So they're not going to be impacted by this. If you got your credit card through a local credit union, they should not be impacted by this in any way, shape, or form.
Gotcha. Okay, Senator Marshall is here. Do you have concerns that because one thing I think that has been fairly brought up here is if you cap it at 10%, if you cap credit card interest at 10%, which the president wants to do, I'm not sure if that's in your bill, but if you go down this road, people that may need access to credit no longer have it? Are they going to loan sharks down on the street corner, and suddenly that's actually a worse situation for them? Do you have any issues or concerns on that front?
I don't. I think that's a false argument. As I pointed out earlier, banks with assets less than $100 billion can still charge 15%, 20%, or whatever it is. But, Pete, think about this. I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan.
Yeah, me too.
If you're carrying $7,000 or $10,000 over on your credit card every month, maybe you shouldn't borrow the money. Maybe you should try to live within your means. And I understand there's people listening that like, my gosh, how do I do it? But for decades, for centuries, Americans lived without credit cards at all, and we certainly paid off our credit card every month as well. So, when your interest is getting real high, basically the bank is saying, hey, you're living above your means. Do you really need 3 cell phones? Do you need 5 televisions? Do you need a new car? And I'm not trying to be too critical, but I would go back and do the Dave Ramsey course if I'm carrying the average American family is carrying $7,000 of credit card debt over month to month, an interest rate between 20 and 30%. You can't make ends meet.
No, you can't. But, Senator, is it fair to say that maybe a fallacy in the bill itself by tying this all back to personal responsibility and Dave Ramsey principles and living within your means and the government just staying out of it and saying what we've got to really preach is people living within their means, and what the government can do to help the middle class is make sure that the dollar's not getting devalued by the year, which is what we've suffered through the last several years?
I mean, you make a great point. It's hard to, the government certainly is not going to teach morals, and I'm not sure that this is it's a moral lesson anyway on how to live within your means. I guess, Pete, I've become pretty pragmatic. I have my values. We share faith and same conservative Judeo-Christian values, but I've become pragmatic. I woke up here and all of a sudden, these banks are just out of control. Big banks, Wall Street banks are out of control. The credit unions out of control. We have PBMs, which have a monopoly as well. Health insurance, there's like one hospital system for every market area. There's 1 or 2 insurance companies for the entire state. So we live. What the government should do is roll back regulations. Overregulation creates consolidation of industry. I think it's one of the reasons that small banks got out of the credit card industry. Is that A, the big banks could just do it more efficiently, and B, it was just one more compliance issue for them. So I think the federal government should be focused on rolling back regulations. I wish I didn't have to do this. I wish there was competition. I wish that the credit card companies would have been broken up, but they're not. And I just want to do whatever I can. And President Trump is absolutely committed to bringing down the cost of groceries. And again, our credit card bill is going to drive down the cost of gas and groceries 1 or 2%. I mean, It'll be like close to zero inflation for gas or groceries the rest of the year if we pass our bill.
Yeah. All right. So what's your timeline? I mean, we know things can move slowly in Congress, but it seems like there is bipartisan support when you've got conservatives and Elizabeth Warren on the same page. There might actually be some runway there. So what's your timeline on this in the final minute?
Yeah, Pete, well, we're on Trump time now, right? We're on Trump time. Let's put it this way. Friday afternoon, I'm driving home to my home in Great Bend, outside of Great Bend, and I'm almost to Hutchinson. And I get a call from my staff. The president's going to call you in a second. Like, okay, it's Friday night. I don't know if it's 7 o'clock. I'm at Walmart parking lot in Hutchinson, Kansas. I got to pick up some groceries. I'm talking to the president of the United States about this at 7, 8 o'clock at night in the Walmart parking lot in Hutchinson, Kansas, snowing cats and dogs, by the way. I'm just trying to tell you that we're on Trump time now. He said this 10% thing was going on. He wanted to cap things at 10%. He said, hey, Marshall's the credit card guy. Get him on the phone, and away we go. And I bet I've talked and texted with the president a half a dozen times and his staff since then. So we got to find a way to do it. What, where, and when, who knows, but we're on Trump time now. He is dead serious about lowering the cost of living for people, and you're going to see him doing it in housing. He's going to have a big announcement tomorrow. Friday he wants me to come to the White House, and he's going to talk about how his plan for health care, for housing, and that's what the Republicans are focused on, driving down the cost of living. Under Joe Biden, we got a 50% increase in housing. We got to break that, figure that one out. Child care is way up, property insurance, health insurance, We inherited this mess. We're going to clean it up, though.
Roger Marshall, who would have thought one of the most important conversations in the country last week was being had in the Hutchinson, Kansas Walmart parking lot mid-snowstorm? So there you go. Senator, thank you as always for your time. We really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to that meeting I guess you'll be a part of coming up here later this week.
Okay, thanks so much, Pete.
All right, there you go. Good stuff as always with Roger Marshall on KCMO. Our 6 at 6, top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour. We'll wrap up the hour with that next.
From Overland Park to Parkville, you're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
All right, let's let it rip. It's that time of the morning.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver shared his concerns about a reported ICE facility coming to Kansas City. Cleaver is demanding answers from DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security, about a reported proposal to make Kansas City home to a massive immigration detention facility. Cleaver said he has given the agency until January 23rd to respond to his demands. Or else what?
Yeah. Ooh.
You mustard moo.
Oh, my gosh. All right. We'll have more on this story coming up just after 7 o'clock, but that was the lead story everywhere around Kansas City yesterday. Next
Number
up,
2.
in our 6 at 6, well, let's go here. The Clintons have refused to testify in the House Epstein probe. So former President Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said yesterday they will not comply with a congressional subpoena to testify in a House committee's investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. And now Republican lawmakers are preparing contempt of Congress proceedings against both of them.
Number 3.
Next up in our 6 at 6, well, let's go to this. The Royals have moved in the outfield wall for the upcoming season. The outfield wall will be moved in 8 to 10 feet starting near each foul pole. The gaps will remain or will reportedly go from 387 feet to 379 feet and then taper back towards center field, which will stay at 410 feet. The wall will also be shorter, changing from 10 feet in most places to 8.5 feet. So there you go on that front.
Number 4.
Rolling through our 6 at 6. What happened in Lawrence last night? Whoa, that was something else.
Woo!
Chase, Mark, did you roll with your Jayhawks on FanDuel?
You know, I didn't. It was the first time I had not done the money line in a while on them. So
Oh,
feel
well.
bad.
They rolled number 2 Iowa State 84-63. Allen Fieldhouse, man, something about that place. There was a players-only meeting before the game, and KU came out firing on all cylinders. They had a 21-point halftime lead, held Iowa State to 23 points in the opening 20 minutes, and they sent number 2 Iowa State to their first loss of the season. So how about that? That was quite a game last night. Tonight, K-State is hosting UCF. That is at 7 o'clock. That'll be on Peacock. And then in the SEC, you've got the Mizzou game tonight at 6. They're home against Auburn. That game's on ESPN2. We'll have that up at our event at Three Halves Brewing in Liberty. We'll be there tonight, myself and Keatsman, 5 to 7. Still a chance to RSVP at kcmotalkradio.com.
Number 5.
All right. This was bizarre. 11 House Democrats have bucked their party to side with Republicans in a reversal of Biden-era shower regulations. The House voted yesterday in a bill that now goes to the Senate along bipartisan lines to reverse Joe Biden's regulations on shower heads. A move Republican lawmakers framed as a quick and easy way to return choice to homeowners. It's called the Shower Act, acronym for Saving Homeowners from Overregulation with Exceptional Rinsing. That's the Shower Act. Oh, my gosh. So we now have a removal of nozzles and shower heads and what can and cannot come out of your shower head. At least we'll see if it goes to the Senate and then ultimately ends up on President Trump's desk.
Number 6.
And last up, if you didn't see this, Kiefer Sutherland arrested in Hollywood after allegedly assaulting a driver in Los Angeles. 59-year-old star arrested in Hollywood just after midnight on Monday after police responded to a call of an assault on a ride-share driver. That's bizarre. There's your 6 at 6. Is ice in Kansas City? We have the details next. Emmanuel Cleaver has never been one who's been all that good with his words, at least not in the last few years. And this letter that he wrote yesterday is just another example of that. So Emmanuel Cleaver wrote a letter yesterday to Kristi Noem, who is, of course, the head of Homeland Security under the President of the United States. And he wrote the letter because there is new reporting that suggests the Department of Homeland Security wants to build ICE detention centers, including one in Kansas City. And Emmanuel Cleaver obviously is not happy about that, if and when it does happen. So Emmanuel Cleaver wrote a 2-page letter to Kristi Noem, and it just had in size 70 font the following words.
You mustard moo.
That was it. It was just, all it said size 70 font, 2 pages, and it said, you musty moo, 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 to the Honorable Kristi Noem. And then he hit send. I wish it was that simple. But someone on his staff obviously wrote something else. And the letter reads in part as follows. No human deserves to be rounded up as cattle, shipped across the country, imprisoned in warehouses, and stripped of their dignity, Cleaver writes in this letter. The proposal will degrade our society, divide our communities, waste taxpayer dollars, and stress the civility of our institutions to the point of fracture. Based on what? Emmanuel Cleaver has been the mayor and the congressman in this city, when you combine them both, for 30 years. He has been the congressman and the mayor in Kansas City for over 30 years, during some of the most violent years in the history of this city. And he's worried about degrading society, dividing communities, wasting taxpayer money. Have you looked in the mirror? Have you looked in your own backyard? Have you looked in the city that you have represented in some way, shape, and form for 3 decades to wonder if wasting taxpayer dollars, degrading society, and dividing communities are suddenly things that maybe you should have top of mind in your own backyard, regardless of what ICE is doing, John?
Nailed it, sir. I was going to say there's a powerful allergy to incarceration units throughout the history here, huh?
Yeah.
Local, county, federal,
yeah,
etc.
Exactly right. So Cleaver writes in his letter to Kristi Noem, over the past year, news outlets have documented allegations of sexual abuse, medical neglect, physical abuse, and solitary confinement inside of ICE detention centers, leading to legal orders to close the most egregious detention centers. Okay, and you know what else we've had? And I'm not saying anybody should be mistreated in an ICE detention facility. I'm not defending that, but that doesn't mean you don't have them. Like, if people are mistreated in prisons, do you not have prisons? If there are stories of bad prison employees or mistreatment in prisons, do you then throw your hands up and say, well, I guess we can't have these things? Or do you say, no, civilized society actually must have them, but we also have to have the right people running them, and yes, we need accountability within them? He's making the argument of a 5-year-old. Literally, I go home and I get arguments like this all day. Okay? I get arguments about this when it comes to not eating dinner, when it comes to wanting to watch a television show, when it comes to wanting to take a marker and draw on the wall. I get these kinds of arguments. And that's basically what Emmanuel Cleaver is doing here. You don't not have ICE detention facilities because you've had bad things happen to people in prior instances in other parts of the country. You don't say, well, we can't have them because this has happened somewhere else. You say, how do we make sure we have the right people in charge so those things don't happen again? That's what you do. So he's making a terrible argument, a sophomoric argument, and one that anybody with common sense is going to see through. But when you're this blinded by your own political ideology and by your own political base, and you're frankly held hostage by your own political base, this is the kind of argument you have no choice but to make. And that's what Emmanuel Cleaver is doing here. He writes, while we strongly believe in an orderly immigration system. No, you don't. No, you don't believe in that, Emmanuel. No.
I'm getting pissed now.
No, you do not believe in an orderly immigration system. If you did, you would have had some semblance of criticism against the last guy over 4 years when there were 15 million people coming across the border illegally.
Come on, man.
You would have. Spare me that.
Show some RESPICT.
I mean, a little bit of respect for anybody reading this letter would be nice. Cleaver writes, while we strongly believe in an orderly immigration system, Kansas Cityans and I do not want to see the stench of these extreme mass deportation policies centralized in Kansas City. The stench? They're removing the stench. The stench are the protesters outside of the detention facilities, by the way. They're the ones who haven't showered in a while. That's the real stench. But no, the stench are people who have been here illegally while committing crimes. And those are the people who the administration is hyper-focused on. Now, does it mean that they haven't also arrested people through ICE who may not be hardened criminals while they're here? Yes, that is true. There's no doubt about it. But the focus has remained on people who have committed really violent crimes while also being here illegally. And there is no justification, even if you are soft on immigration, there is no justification for having individuals like that here in this country who have been involved in murder allegations and rape and child trafficking and things like that. There is no justification for having those people in this country while they also happen to be here illegally. There's no defense of any of that. And that's where a lot of the focus has remained. Not exclusively, I admit, but a lot of the focus has remained for the administration. And if having potentially, as the reports are, an ICE facility here in Kansas City, if that is something that helps them expedite the process, you're not getting any complaints from me. And I actually would imagine that I know there's going to be a very loud portion of Kansas City that's going to be potentially very upset by this. I believe most people are going to say, oh, all right. I mean, sounds pretty good. And by the way, could we use a percentage of that facility for the jail while we wait for our jail here in Kansas City? Can Quentin Lucas cut a deal with Trump and say, hey, can we get 15% of that space to use until our jail is built here in the next few years? That's what I'd be doing. If Quentin Lucas wants to reignite his political career, that's a heck of a way to do it, John.
Think of it as adding a ballroom.
Oh, gosh. Did you see, by the way, the Rose Garden got a new sign? It looks like a hotel now. That thing is hideous, but I'll leave that for another day. Dennis in Bonner Springs. What's up, Dennis?
Hey, Pete, I wanted to comment on your comment about what he wrote, supposedly, and your girls. Your girls have a little more reasoning skill at their young age than these interns that write this crap for these people. I mean, that's all it is. Like a local TV personality told me when we had an email exchange, I have people that are writing this stuff for me, and on a Friday, I don't have time to proofread it all, and you just proved to me that I should. These people, they're writing stuff. They have no reasoning skills. They're 22 years old, out of college. I mean, it's a joke. And these senators, these representatives, they don't check it out. They don't have time. They're too busy doing insider trading. And, well, I'm sorry, but we're laughing about it. But brother, look at it. I mean, you can't argue with it. Even you had to laugh. You didn't argue with me.
Well, I didn't know you were going to go there, but hey, that's why you got to get on board with the Nancy Pelosi stock tracker. You can track Pelosi's trades, and you'll be a millionaire by next year there, D.
You know, you're right. If I wasn't liquid because of my age.
Yeah, true. I understand.
My point is, it's just like these protesters, all this, the whole Democrat Party. How can you be against ICE? How can you be against making our country safer?
I don't get it. I don't get it, man. I don't get it.
Hey.
The only thing I'll say there, Dennis, thank you, my man.
All right.
The only thing I'll say is that Trump, I think, while the polling would suggest his shutting down of the border and his handling of illegal immigration is one of his more popular policies, softening his approach to all of it is going to be something that gets him an even bigger win on the issue going forward. And actually, he started to do that yesterday. The president was asked about Renee Good, the woman who was from Kansas City, ends up in Minneapolis, and was, of course, killed last week by that ICE agent. Her parents live in Kansas. And the president was asked yesterday, hey, what would you say to the father of Renee Good, who, by the way, is a big supporter of yours? And I thought it was one of his more presidential answers. And I think he understands that the tone on this issue during a very heated time in the United States of America can be improved upon. And you saw a glimpse of that yesterday. I'll share it with you coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio. And your first chance today for a flyaway meet and greet to see Riley Green at Stagecoach is coming up at 7:34 right here on KCMO.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
So the President of the United States did a one-on-one last night with CBS News, and he was asked by the anchor on CBS Evening News what message he would send to Renee Good's father. Now, Renee Good's parents, as we found out last week when this whole thing happened, live in Valley Falls, Kansas. And we found out last night, and I wondered if this was going to turn out to be the case. At least his or her father is a big supporter of President Trump's. And Valley Falls looks like it's just due northeast of Topeka. So 95.7 may come in loud and clear in Valley Falls. It's kind of southeast of Holton, southwest of Nortonville, due west of Leavenworth. So it's not in the Kansas City metro by any means, but, it's in the region, certainly.
Just north of Perry Lake.
There you go. Very nice, Mark.
Love
You looking
Perry
at
Lake.
you looking at a map?
Yeah.
Good job.
I used to drive around there sometimes for Amazon.
Oh yeah. Wow, you went that far out?
Yeah.
Wow, look
crazy.
at you. Jeez, all right. Good for you, man. I like having you here better. So the parents are right there in Valley Falls. And yesterday, Tony DeCopel asks President Trump, hey, what's your message to Renee Good's father? And I thought it was a fair question, and I thought the president handled it very well when he said this.
I've got an important question about the situation in Minnesota, the death of Renee Nicole Good. I've been speaking to her father, who is a big supporter of yours, like many Americans are, but he's heartbroken right now.
I can understand that.
He's heartbroken because his daughter is dead, that's
Sure.
obvious. He's also heartbroken because your administration so quickly has come out and said she's a domestic terrorist. What do you want to say to her father right now?
Well, I want to say to the father that I love all of our people. They can be on the other side. As you say, he might be on my side.
He is on your side.
And I think that's great. And I do. I think it's great. And I would bet you that she, under normal circumstances, was a very solid, wonderful person. But, her actions were pretty tough. I've seen it many ways and many different shapes and forms. But the bottom line is, look, we have hundreds of thousands of murderers in our countries, killers. ICE is trying to get them out. They were let in through an open border policy of Sleepy Joe Biden. ICE is working very hard to get them out. Their job is being made very, very difficult. And, when you look at that tape, it can be viewed two ways, I guess. But when you look at the way that car was pulled away, there are a couple of versions of that tape that are very, very bad.
So first off, I thought one of the mistakes the administration made right out of the gates, and I don't know if this was Kristi Noem or Trump or whoever, but their first goal should have been to lower the temperature. And by immediately saying, hey, Renee Good is a domestic terrorist, is she a knucklehead getting in the way of law enforcement? Absolutely. Is she committing felonies leading up to her tragic death? Yes. Domestic terrorist is strong, and at a time when you want to bring the temperature down for everybody, lobbing that out there is just like, boom, let's throw a bomb into this whole thing. So that was a fair question by Tony to President Trump. And then President Trump, I think overall, handles that pretty well and says, listen, I get it. We're both fathers. I understand the notion of obviously loving your daughter and not wanting that to happen to anybody that you care about or even anybody that you don't know. And the president says, I love all our people. They can be on either side. That's great. And he also goes to say, when you look at, what she was doing, those were obviously not good things. And her decisions in part, and I'm paraphrasing here what the president says, but her decisions in part led to that tragic outcome. Her actions were pretty tough, is what President Trump said there. And that's fair. And this is not a guy who's like Mr. Empathy or sympathy. That's just not his style, right? But by his standards, that was fairly sympathetic from the President of the United States. And that's a good thing. Because right now, the way that he continues to, I think, win on the issue is by blending, yes, tough policies, getting bad people out of the country who have been allowed in, but then also having a little bit of that empathy and sympathy in tragic situations like this, or just for the situation in general. And that's how he ends up, I believe, winning more of the American public onto his side on this thing. And you heard some of that last night in that interview on CBS. And he said here, I would bet you that she, under normal circumstances, was a very solid, wonderful person, which makes you wonder how this individual got radicalized. And we don't have those answers yet. We don't know. I think there's probably more to come. What was her partner's involvement in all this? She seemed like a crazy radical, and those are still fair questions to ask. We have a lot of questions after this tragedy in the Northland with a young father. We'll ask those coming up.
On Wednesday's Guy Benson Show, our dear friend Riley Gaines on a major case before the Supreme Court on protecting women's sports, coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
Man, this story out of the Northland, it's a combination of making my blood boil and then also just giving me that pit in my stomach. That you have a 41-year-old father who lost his life on Monday morning, Chris Wells, after basically getting into it with a neighbor, Jeffrey King, who has been a menace to the neighborhood in the Northland for a long time, has had dozens of calls against him to 311 in KCPD, and nothing was done about it. And then this argument, allegedly on Monday morning, leads to Chris Wells getting shot 13 times, 8 times in the back, and losing his life. Prosecutors have charged Jeffrey King in connection with the deadly shooting. That came down yesterday from Clay County Prosecutor Zachary Thompson. There was a vigil last night in the Northland, and KMBC had a good report on this last night. Here's what it sounded like.
Anybody that knows Chris knew he was a kind man, a good man. This should have never happened.
Michael Galletti lives across the street from Jeffrey King. He's had to look at King's cluttered yard and driveway for years, as he says King has terrorized his neighbors.
He would shine bright lights in people's windows, loudspeakers directed at him.
KMBC 9 found more than a dozen 311 complaints in the last year alerting the city to King's behavior, saying he was parking cars in the street, making it difficult for other cars to pass, and was displaying vulgar signs on his property. Court docs say Wells' wife had a no-contact order against King based on multiple past incidents.
Jeff has a tendency to say terrible things to women and obscene things.
As a memorial for Chris Wells grows near where he was killed, Galletti wishes the city and police would have done more to curb King's behavior before Monday's tragic shooting.
Anybody that stands back and looks at this can see that there needs to be some improvements. This could have been avoided.
Well, it could have been avoided if the city of Kansas City, combined with KCPD, did more. You think about the basic needs being met by your local government. And when you have somebody like this and you have several complaints against them by neighbors, you have someone who has harassed neighbors, who has harassed, allegedly, women, who had a trailer in his driveway that had a big sign on it that said, "Show me your beehole." I'm looking at it right now on the Kansas City Reddit page. It's like a trailer with a massive flag that falls down the side of the trailer, and that's what the flag said. He had junk all over his front yard. Clearly, this was a mentally disturbed individual. How long he had been in this home, how he got into this home, because it's a nice neighborhood. You know, I mean, the homes look like they're 2,500, 3,000 square feet, give or take. I mean, this is not a dumpy neighborhood by any stretch of the imagination up in the Northland. And this guy clearly had multiple screws loose. And, you know, he's got cars all over the place. It's a one-lane road. Someone's potentially in danger of that. He's arguing with neighbors nonstop. He's shining lights into their homes. And they're calling. And all you can do as a tax-paying resident is call the city and call the law enforcement. And nothing was getting done. Absolutely nothing. And at some point, it's like, what am I paying taxes for? If nothing can be done in situations like this, and you're at your wit's end if you're Chris Wells, and there are posts that I've seen from Chris Wells that have shown up on social media from Facebook from like 6-7 months ago, where he's complaining about all this. On his Facebook page, he's tagging Mayor Lucas, he's tagging KCPD, and no one's doing anything about it. And then he gets into some kind of confrontation with this guy, Jeffrey King, on Monday morning, and he loses his life, and he leaves behind 3 daughters and a son. Young kids over this. I mean, it's local government in large part at its absolute worst.
Should have just taken him to the Kansas City Yeah, there isn't one, is
yeah,
there?
yeah. Whoops. Yeah.
If we'd have hauled this guy in, we'd have had to farm him out to Warrensburg, right?
Well, exactly right. And we know that KCPD is really not looking to do that at all. So this whole story, and there was a candlelight vigil that happened last night on 78th Street at about 7 p.m., and we do have a link that we have shared on our social medias at KCMO Talk Radio for a giving link to stand with the Wells family. This guy's 41 years old, and a tragedy like this leads to his death. The story here goes on Give Kind Go, Give Kind, The Wells family is facing an unimaginable loss. A devoted father of 4 was tragically and senselessly taken from them. He was a loving husband and parent, a source of strength for his wife and children, and someone who was deeply loved by many. The sudden loss has left his family grieving while also facing the reality of everyday needs. This fundraiser is meant to help support the Wells family during this difficult time, including food, household expenses, and other immediate needs, so they can focus on healing and caring for one another. Any contribution, no matter the size, will help ease the burden and show the Wells family that they are not alone. Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers and consider sharing this page to spread support. So we have done that on the KCMO Talk Radio pages. I've done that as well on my personal pages. You can see it there. And if you are moved to donate to the family, you can do that. But this is a tragedy that feels completely avoidable. But I understand, it's like this vigilante justice theme that continues on in other parts of the country and also here in Kansas City. Despite the fact that local government is growing in all parts of the country at record rates, it feels like they are more useless than ever before. Because they waste money, they spend it on nonsense, and then on the basic things that you really want your governments to do, which is what? Safety, security, fix the potholes, make sure the streetlights are going, have decent sidewalks. Those basic things that you want them to do, they seem to fail at. They're good at making up things that they think are important, but the basics, despite spending more money than ever, are being left behind. And that I find absolutely tragic. So Northlanders, I think, are going to have more juice in the future of Kansas City. I mean, you got a mayor's race coming up here in 18 months. And you will have, I think, multiple candidates potentially out of the Northland. I'd say one legitimate candidate coming out of the Northland, or maybe there's more than one. But you will have Northlanders, I believe, well represented in this mayor's race coming up in Kansas City. And for far too long, the Northland has had to take a back seat to everything south of the river. That is changing. The Northland is where it's at. The Northland is where people are going, where they want to be, where they want to live. There's a strong appeal up in the Northland right now in Kansas City. And while this is not the reason or the story where you say to yourself, we got to have a Northlander because of this story with Chris Wells and this tragedy, it's just another example of how people up there feel like they can't get the basic services, despite the fact that they're paying a big portion of the bill to make Kansas City operate. So this is just, it's a terrible story all around. And, you had Kansas City Councilman Wes Rogers out of the Northland telling Fox 4 he had spoken to Chris Wells several times. He said brief interactions, always positive. It just kept coming back to his wife and his kid. And there's a post from Chris Wells from July of last year where he says he can't wait to move out of Kansas City as quickly as he can. But like so many people right now, if you got a low mortgage rate, if you refinanced or whatever during COVID, you're going to move when prices are up 30, 40, 50%, and you're going to go from a 3% rate to a 6% rate. So I don't know if he was waiting to do that. I don't know what his plans obviously were, but he probably felt like a lot of people. He was stuck where he was at for at least a period of time. And when you got 4 little kids, that makes it that much more difficult. And now this, young guy at 41 years old has lost his life over this confrontation with a crazy neighbor who the city and the police department did nothing about. 913-408-7957. That's the text line and the studio line on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Stream us all morning long on the KCMO Talk Radio app. As always, on the text line, Pete Wells' oldest child was only 12 years old. No, I know. The photos are all over social media, and his kids look like they range from maybe 12 down to, 3 or 4, same age as my kids. And now they don't have a father. Pete, where's Emmanuel Cleaver on this? Well, technically, I don't think this is, I don't know if this is Cleaver's current district or not. I don't know. There's plenty of things to rag on Cleaver for. I'm not sure this is it. Trust me, I'm not looking to give Cleaver an excuse on anything, but, like everything in life, you got to pick and choose your spots here.
Well, it's sort of that 30,000-foot view where he's allergic to the incarceration of people. So,
yeah.
And sort of. I get you.
Yeah, I get it. 913-408-7957. We have coming up next hour, Patrick Touhey is going to be here on KCMO. Scott Faughn from the Missouri Times at 9 o'clock. He'll recap what we heard from Governor Kehoe yesterday in his State of the State. In the meantime, there is some drama with the hottest restaurant in Kansas City. I'm going to dub this Buttergate. We have those details next on KCMO.
from Smithville to Shawnee Mission. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
We'll dub it Buttergate because we need another one of those gates, 1587 allegedly was claiming it was selling items and using butter from Chateau Butter and using Betty Ray's ice cream, which is owned by Matt Chateau, even though they were not using either product for a period of time. Here's the story from the Kansas City Star. 1587 Prime, that is the Mahomes-Kelsey restaurant inside the Lowe's Hotel, accused of a bait-and-switch by local vendor. Until Monday morning, when the Star inquired, 1587 Prime's website listed Betty Ray's Ice Cream and Chateau Milk Company among its local partners. Matt Chateau, who owns both companies, said he'd been hearing for months that servers at 1587 have been telling customers the butter on the table is made by Chateau Milk, and the ice cream is courtesy of Betty Ray's. The problem is, according to Chateau, it's not. I have not been to 1587 Prime. I was with somebody last week who can basically buy whatever they want. Like, there are no strings attached to their monetary decisions. They can buy almost anything that they want. I mean, like outside of a private jet, this person could buy anything. And this person said to me, Pete, I've been to 1587, and I'll tell you right now, I ain't going back unless somebody else is paying. Just based on principle. He's like, I just couldn't justify it. And he's been back because somebody else paid for it, but but that was it. He's like, it's just ridiculous. He said the prices are just out of control. And this was coming from someone who, once again, can buy whatever they want. So the story goes on the note here that 1587 has not served Chateau Butter since its pre-opening events back in early September. And the restaurant cut ties with Betty Ray's back in October after 1587 Prime management asked Betty Ray's to lower its wholesale prices to a level that would not have been profitable. Chateau said here to the Kansas City Star, we've been trying for months to get them to remove our name from the menu and stop telling customers they're serving our products. It diminishes our brand when you have a restaurant using some national co-op's butter or whoever they're now using while saying it's Chateau. I mean, that's a very reasonable request from Matt Chateau. 1587 said in a statement, our team is constantly sourcing the highest quality ingredients for the most favorable pricing. Unfortunately, it is not always viable to continue carrying a specific product, whether based on pricing, consistency issues, or other factors. This story makes 1587 look like garbage.
Look cheap.
They look cheap. They look like they were trying to brag, yeah, look at us using local. We're all about the local guys. Leaving them on the menu for months after they open up when they weren't even using them. And here's the amazing part, too. Matt Chateau tells the Kansas City Star, we were selling them our ice cream for less than $1 a scoop. They're turning around and selling it for $9 a scoop. And it was 1587 that asked Betty Ray's Chateau to lower the price on the ice cream sales when they're 9Xing the price on a scoop of ice cream. Matt tells the Kansas City Star it felt like too much to ask of us, especially since our business is not reliant on selling ice cream to 1587 Prime. I just felt like I didn't want to be pushed around by these guys just because they think they have enough brand equity to come in and demand even lower prices from local folks. Good for him, man. I think, you know what? That's my kind of guy right there. And we've had Matt on the show. I reached out to him. I texted him late last night. I have not heard back from him yet. But I can't wait. I cannot wait to get him on the show to stick it to 1587. Not that I have anything against 1587, but to his point, you know, these guys come in, and this is not, to be clear, this is not like Travis Kelce and Patrick making this decision, right? They have no idea this is going on.
Right.
They don't have a clue. It's not about Patrick. It's not about Travis. It's about these meatheads who run these places who use the brand equity of Mahomes and Kelce to try to bully guys like Matt Chateau. And he basically told them to pound sand. He did. And then when they wouldn't come back and at least take their name off the menu, he's finally got to go to the media. The only thing I can give Matt a hard time for is not coming to us first. That's the only thing, but it's fine. I'm totally over it. It's all good, man. I'll get him on the show soon. He's fantastic. And love Betty Ray's, love what they do, love the business, love the ice cream. All right? I mean, every time my father-in-law is here, I got 4 pints of Betty Ray's in the freezer for him. He just loves it. So it's all good. But I love this sticking up for the little guy thing that he's doing here and not letting these guys bully around local businesses and local distributors. So he goes on the note here in the Kansas City Star, 1587 Prime confirmed in late October it would no longer place orders from Betty Ray's. So now it goes on the note here. He said Betty Ray's final delivery was on September 23rd. Now, it's theoretically possible that 1587 continued drawing from that inventory well into the fall, but by now, he said there's no way they should be pitching anything on the menu as Betty Ray's. I mean, we're now into mid-January. So, I don't know where this goes from here, but I guess if you go to 1587, and some of you who have been there probably know this, they brag about their relationships with some of the local businesses who may be suppliers of different things that they serve. And Matt's saying, "Hey, that's disingenuous," and I'm good with that. I like him calling them out on that front.
Symbolism over substance.
Absolutely, absolutely. As we put a bow in the 7 o'clock hour, the Royals are moving in their home run fences. They will keep center field at 410 feet, but they'll move them in about 8 to 10 feet from the foul pole, and then they'll also move them in about 8 to 10 feet in the gaps, left center, right center, and they're going to lower the outfield wall from 10 feet to 8.5 feet. Now, Mark, I know you've done the deep dive on this. Should we be happy with this for the Royals?
If you want more offense, if you want more runs, if you want 4 Royals last year would have had over 40 home runs if this had been the case last year, it's insane.
4 Royals would have hit 40 home runs?
Yeah, Michael Garcia would have had 24 more home runs last year.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he had a lot of doubles that went off the wall that would have been home runs in the new park.
Wow.
Or the new.
Yeah, the new park. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Oh, sorry, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Continue with the
remember
numbers.
when Bo Jackson played there and he ran up the wall. Good thing it was 10 foot then, or he'd have been over the backside. Plus, he threw out Harold Reynolds. This was in the Kingdom, but from the warning track, he threw him out at home. The ball didn't bounce. So, piece of cake for Bo to throw somebody out from the warning track now.
All right, there's John Anthony going down memory lane from 45 years ago. Mark, continue with the numbers, please.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, Salvi Perez, they all would have hit 40 home runs or more. And it just seems like with Jack Caglione coming up, he's a home run hitter. Carter Jensen at the end of last season, they're going to have 6 guys that could hit, 30, 40 home runs.
Okay. Well, I don't have a problem with teams basically building ballparks to fit their needs, right? I mean, move these things in, move them back if you have a team that maybe is more geared towards not hitting home runs, and it's all good. I joked yesterday on social media, though. I said, what if this was phase 1 of the Royals saying, we're staying at the K and renovating? How about that? There you go. Oh, my gosh. There's a total 180 for you.
You know what they could be doing, though?
What?
Dimensions for a new stadium. Like, if this is good for them, maybe they'll keep these dimensions in the next stadium.
Oh, gosh. The way they're moving, the snail's pace.
Suddenly Washington Square Park fits right inside Kaufman.
Yeah. They'll play on the rooftop at Union Station. That's what they'll do. Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, that's great news. Wow. Suddenly the Royals are going to be power packing it. 40 home runs all over the place around that lineup. I like it. I like it a lot. Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio. Happy Wednesday. It's a hump day. Patrick Touhey is going to be here at 8:30. Talk about the Chiefs and also touch on the state of the state from Mike Kehoe, who delivered that yesterday on the Missouri side of the state line. Coming up, though, we have to still get into some of the ideas coming out of Topeka, regulating e-scooters and more, all next. So I never want to overreact to some of the ideas that are coming out of state capitals the first week of the legislative session, because how this always goes is sometimes you get ideas that get thrown out there. It's guys looking for attention, like that goober over in the St. Louis side of the state who's like, we're going to make the Missouri Battlehawks the football team of Missouri. It's like, really? And he's like some diehard conservative, but he's upset about the Chiefs, so they're going to make the Battlehawks the official football team of Missouri.
Can you get one of those TOD things like they put on a car title so when they fold,
yeah,
we can get the next team will be automatically elevated?
You realize how embarrassing that is? I mean, you're better off not having a official football team in your state than making it the Battlehawks of the, UFL or whatever it is. So you just get bad ideas. It's people looking for attention, things like that. But this one in Kansas, I'm intrigued by. Kansas lawmakers today are expected to introduce new legislation aimed at regulating electric scooters across the state. This follows the tragic death of the 10-year-old boy, Duke Omert, a fourth grader, who was killed riding his e-scooter in Leawood just a few weeks ago. That happened in October. So what they're looking at, and I know that there are local municipalities who have added multiple layers of rules governing where and how these devices can be used. Prairie Village has done that. Shawnee has done that. Some Johnson County shopping centers have also acted, banning e-bikes and e-scooters from their properties. But now this issue is supposed to be taken up by the state house. I think it can actually be done in a pretty bipartisan way. Like, unless you're just worried about government overreach, which I understand, but to me, this is just like having laws for driving vehicles. We have age limits, or age minimums, I guess you would say. We have a lot of rules and regulations and restrictions, and right now, these e-bikes and e-scooters feel like they just do whatever they want. I mean, I was almost hit by one in the neighborhood. This guy flies around on his e-scooter, or actually, I think he's on an e-bike. And I'll go for like a run Saturday morning, and this time of year, it's still dark out. And he's got his, he's got all his lights on, and he's got his, bells ringing around town and whatnot. And, he almost hit me on that thing. And then another guy, unless it was the same guy, it might have been the same guy. I was walking the girls in the double stroller the other day, and I mean, he almost rams into me too. And I'm like, dude, would you act like a vehicle, which is what you are on these e-bikes? They move, man. They move. This is not a guy who's just, out for a joyride on his bike. They move. So the proposed legislation in Topeka is expected to be introduced and will go through the standard committee process. If approved, it would advance to the full House or Senate for debate, marking the first statewide effort to address e-scooter safety in Kansas. I don't know why you wouldn't do this. And it feels like it's such an easy thing to do. Unless there's big scooter lobbyists in Topeka right now who are going to try to make sure that they squash this thing, and I don't think we're at the point yet where Big Scooter has lobbyists, then this should easily pass. This should be a no-brainer. Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals should all be on board with this, because what it's really about is about public safety. And not just, by the way, safety for pedestrians and safety for, regular people walking around or biking around on regular bikes. It's also safety for the individuals using these scooters and using these e-bikes, because they're putting themselves also in a lot of harm. And you see these teenagers flying around, and I'm not like, hey, get off my lawn, kid. Like, I've got little kids myself. They may want to ride these things one day. And if you have state rules and state laws and state regulations, you help everybody in the process instead of cities and having to deal with this. And then you've also got, shopping centers having to deal with this. So that's something I hope that they get done and get done quickly, even though nothing seems to happen as quickly and easily as it should in these state houses. You had the State of the State yesterday as well from Laura Kelly. And Laura Kelly, I'm watching this thing yesterday, and I was waiting for some commentary on the Chiefs. And she gave it to you, and it was even more out of touch than I would have expected, and really just disingenuous.
We were able to accomplish this amazing feat for two reasons. First, we made Kansas a place the Chiefs want to call home, with a strong economy, a strong workforce, strong communities, and of course, an extraordinary fan base. And second, because a bipartisan team of leaders in this chamber, along with the local officials we just recognized, and many members of my administration, worked together to make this happen.
such a cute soundbite.
The Chiefs were not wooed to Kansas because of the economy, the workforce, or the fan base. They were wooed to Kansas because Kansas gave them everything that they wanted. And it was a better deal from the government than what Missouri offered. That's it. And from what I heard from somebody in the know last week, they're convinced that this thing did come down to the 11th hour. The Chiefs went in with one final ask, and basically they said that the Kansas politicians jump, and the Kansas politicians just said, yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Donovan. How high? Yes, Mr. Hunt. How high must I jump? And the Chiefs said 10 feet, and they say, sir, we'll go 11. Sir, we'll go to 12. Whatever you need, sir. And Donovan's like, I can't turn this down. I'd be moronic to turn this down. And that's apparently how it went down on that final maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of the week before the announcement on Monday, John.
With the reduction of the Royals' wall height, I was thinking we would have to factor in outfielders' vertical leap. But the politicians too.
Yeah,
What's
exactly.
your vertical?
Well, the GOP guys are debating here in a couple of weeks. I want to see Clark Hunt show up, and he says jump, and I want to see who jumps the highest. That's what I want to see. Okay. But, it's got nothing to do with the state's economy. It was all about the incentive package. You look at the state of Kansas and U.S. News and World Report, they rank all the states based on economy. And the best ones are Florida, Texas, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, North Carolina. I mean, those are the best economic states. You look at most rankings and they have those states near the top, right? Kansas's economy, U.S. News and World Report, and it's just one data point, but it's one that, listen, business leaders look at and people value. And they've got Kansas sitting right now at, where's the latest numbers? They've got it at mid-30s, 34. Number 34. All right, the workforce for the Chiefs is not going to change. The people at the corporate offices right now at Arrowhead are going to be the same ones that end up in Olathe. They weren't drawn because now they're going to fire all the Missourians and just hire Kansas people to go to K10 and Ridgeview, where the reported offices are going to be. It's got nothing to do with it. It's the same workforce. It's the same exact pool of people you're pulling from, whether you're Arrowhead or you're 20 minutes down the road. And then she's like, the fan base. The fan base is the same too. She's acting like they moved to Kansas because the Chiefs fans in Kansas are like more diehard than they are in Missouri, which I'm not playing that game. It's the same pool of people. She acts like there was a relocation involved here, right? Like there was no NFL team and the Jacksonville Jaguars decided to move to Kansas City because of the economy and the workforce and the fan base. If that was the example, then what she said there may ring true. If you have a team moving from out of state to Kansas City, you can highlight the economy, the workforce, and the fan base. When you're moving 20 minutes down the road, none of that changes, and all of it is irrelevant. But this is the grift that's been going on from these politicians, from Laura Kelly on down, Democrats and Republicans, for the last 3.5 weeks now on this deal. So I didn't think it was going to end, or she was going to stop or not mention it yesterday in the State of the State. But even I was just blown away by how it was framed by the governor of Kansas. And maybe I shouldn't have been. Maybe that's shame on me. But they gave up the farm. I mean, this is, in many respects, the 80-year-old guy with a 30-year-old girlfriend who thinks she actually loves him for who he is. That's what this is. The state of Kansas thinks that Clark Hunt and Mark Donovan and the Chiefs actually love them for who they are and for who Kansas is and what Kansas is. They don't care about any of that. They got the best deal. The Chiefs said jump, and the Kansas politicians said how high. And that's why they're going to Kansas. It is Bill Belichick and his little girlfriend running around Chapel Hill right now. That's what it is. And they continue to try to convince themselves that they're actually being loved by the 25-year-old. And they're not. They're being used. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, We'll have Patrick Touhey at the bottom of the hour. Doug Wareham, he is the head of the Kansas Bankers. He's going to join us next. You know, there's this beef going on, obviously, between Roger Marshall, who was on the show early this morning, and some of the banking community on these credit card interest rates and what they should be, what they shouldn't be. We're getting both sides of this morning. Marshall was on earlier. If you missed that, that'll be up on the podcast. Let's hear the other side from the Kansas Bankers. Doug Wareham is next.
from Lenexa to Lee Summit. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Well, we had on Senator Marshall this morning. Of course, he's getting a lot of attention. The president is wanting him to move on a bipartisan bill to do things like capping interest rates on credit cards. Obviously, the president has proposed a 1-year 10% cap on credit cards, and that is something that he personally wants to see happen. Let's get both sides of this. Doug Wareham, president of the Kansas Bankers Association, joining us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM in Kansas City. All right, Doug, good morning. Thanks for being here on the show. We appreciate your time. What is the biggest reason that regular people who naturally, as you know, are skeptical of the banks and skeptical of the credit card companies should not be buying this piece of legislation?
Well, first, Pete, thanks for having me on. Our industry is very concerned about this, and we do want the public to know this is about two things. This is about control, and this is about access. There's two pieces or two ideas of federal policy being considered. The one that's here more recently, I guess, gotten more fanfare is the interest rate cap. And the reality is if we put an interest rate cap on credit cards, which is nothing more than a government mandated price cap, access to credit cards is going to plummet. We've already seen the data that over 80%, if you put a 10% cap, that 10% interest rate simply doesn't cover the cost associated with extending credit, the cost associated with covering fraud when it happens. The reality is some people default on their credit cards. We have to remind ourselves when we use our credit card, we're getting a loan, and there's a bank that's behind working with the credit card providers that's backing up that loan and ensuring payment is made, and we all benefit from that. But a 10% cap would simply be devastating to access. I've seen early reports are anybody with a credit score below 740 would likely be deemed too risky to have a credit card. So access is one part of it. Another piece of it, is security and control. Right now, all of us as consumers, we choose what our credit card is. That's where the power is. When I go into any retailer, large or small, and I pull out my Visa, well, Doug Wareham, I chose Visa, and frankly, I'm a Marriott guy. I chose my Marriott Visa, and I use that because I've chose that. I've chose that, number one, because I hope to get reward points to be rewarded so that I can travel and have fun, so there's some benefit on that side. But I also chose it because of security. I trust Visa. I have a Visa card, and as a consumer, I want that to be processed by Visa. Mm-hmm. The Credit Card Competition Act that Senator Marshall is advocating for takes that control away from the consumer. It gives that control to merchants. They will decide who processes my card. And frankly, we've been opposing this idea. I respect Senator Marshall wanting to address affordability issues, but we cannot support government price controls. And the routing mandate is just another angle at trying to put the government involved in a free market system that there's tons of competition in the payment space. It goes beyond credit cards, but those are the two things in my mind. It's control and it's access that are being threatened by these bills.
So Senator Marshall said this morning that this industry, he believes it's a monopoly in the sense that there are really just two major, in his estimations, credit card companies, and then there's really I think he said 5 banks that back everything. Is that your interpretation, and is that monopolistic?
No, we don't believe so, and it's actually been litigated. There were lawsuits that were filed by large merchants and they lost in court. So what are they doing now? They're turning around and they're asking Congress, frankly, to say, we want Congress to say, even though they built it, and no, there's Visa, there's MasterCard, there's Discover, there's American Express, and there's other payment options and rails, Venmo, Zelle, banks of small, medium, and large offer ACH payments. So there's all type. And again, let's not forget, people can still pay with cash, even though in some, settings they don't accept cash anymore, which I'll get to why. But they can still pay with cash and they can still pay with checks. But so there's a lot of other options. I know that the politicians in D.C. that are behind this government intervention or supporting it, they're focused on Visa and MasterCard, and they're focused on the largest banks. Every one of my 188 community banks in Kansas, and I don't have a single one that meets the definition of a large bank. They're all under 10 billion. Most of them are 300 million and under. They're small community banks. They offer credit cards. Now they partner sometimes with a correspondent, a larger bank. A lot of our Kansas banks work with United Missouri Bank or Commerce Bank, who have credit cards. So again, we're talking about decades of relationships, and now we have a proposal in Congress coming in and saying, hey, we know you've invested billions of dollars over decades and decades for the safest payment system in the world that has been built. And Visa, MasterCard, and all those other providers have been part of that. Now we have people in Washington saying, we want government to say, nope, we get to choose who else can do that processing. And Pete, we don't know who that is. So there's no list of who's going to do it right now.
We got a couple minutes. Doug Wareham is joining us, head of the Kansas Bankers Association. I want to ask you, this is a big topic as well, the swipe fees. And I've seen Republicans say on social media and elsewhere that, you go to Europe, those credit card swipe fees are 0.3%, 0.4%. Here, those are 2 to 4%. Small businesses may not even take credit cards anymore because they don't want to take the 2 to 4% haircut. How do we get more competition in that space to potentially drive down some of those? What's the answer on that front?
Well, first off, and when you hear 2 to 4%, those swipe fees, it's typically the swipe fee itself is more like 1.8 to 2%. There are fees that merchants pay for the equipment and the technology to handle credit card processing. So they're always throwing that overall cost in there. But I'm going to back up, Pete. Before we had credit cards, what were they doing? They had people checking you out taking cash. What does it cost? And there have been studies by the Federal Reserve and other third-party groups have said, what's the cost of dealing with cash? It's 9%. Cash gets stolen, cash gets lost. So we've moved to this more efficient system. Other countries that have lower fees, yeah, you bet, they have government intervention. And you know what they don't have? They don't have the Marriott rewards cards and competition like that. They don't have the cashback options. And so that's what's at stake here. People are going to lose the benefits they're getting from their cards. We can always, if government is going to get involved and squeeze something, it's got to come from somewhere. And we had round one of this. Senator Durbin, who's been teaming up with Senator Marshall on this bill, he introduced the original Durbin proposal back in, I think it was 2008, maybe I think it was about 2010 it was adopted, that capped debit card fees. And all of the merchants said, we're going to pass on those savings to consumers. Well, guess what? The Federal Reserve studied it afterwards, and they didn't. Only 2% of retailer surveys passed it on. 22% raised their prices immediately the next year. So this, again, in my opinion, is simply you have merchants. This is being driven by large merchants. And think about this. Every time we go to Target, Walmart, wherever, what are they doing to us? They are hurting us to self-checkout with our credit card or debit card. They're hurting us to check ourselves out. That's their best model. If their cheapest way to do business with cash, they'd have 15 cash lines, or they'd have a dozen check lines. They're making the most money and benefiting the most retailers from the world's safest, most efficient credit card system. But what they are saying is they don't want to build a competing system and have to invest the money that the banking industry and Visa, MasterCard, American Express have invested over time. They're going to the federal government saying, you fix this for us. Cap them, and we simply think that Congress shouldn't take away something that our industry's built.
Doug Wareham, president of the Kansas Bankers Association, giving the other side on this one. Doug, thanks for being here on KCMO. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, there you go. Doug Wareham on 95.7 FM. As you noted, a Marriott Visa guy. Everyone's got their favorite credit card of note. We appreciate Doug joining us on KCMO. This, I'm sure, will continue to be a hot topic in the weeks to come. Coming up, Patrick Touhey with the Show Me Institute. Stadiums, crime, subsidies, and more.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO.
Patrick Touhey is here. He is with the Show Me Institute on KCMO. They are a Missouri-based think tank. Yesterday was the State of the State from Mike Kehoe, who is, of course, the governor of Missouri. He lays out his agenda for the upcoming year. We'll talk about that and more with Patrick. All right, Patrick, good morning. Great to have you on KCMO. You got a hot stadium take for me this week? I mean, people are waiting for one of those, so what do you got?
I don't have anything. Like we've discussed, I'm waiting for that secret number, that secret calculation, but nothing yet.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk to you next week, Patrick. Thanks for being on the show. No, I want to start off with new Missouri crime polling. Shows broad support for reforms focused on solving more violent crimes. Kansas City is trending in the right direction. I got to give credit where it's due. Now, it's got a long ways to go. But what are you seeing on the polling front, and what could that mean for crime, especially in Kansas City?
Well, what we've known for a long time is that what actually affects criminal behavior is confidence that you're going to be caught and prosecuted, not necessarily the severity of your punishment. So any effort that steers resources into higher clearance rate, into catching and prosecuting people on the front end, I think is really valuable. If we do a better job of that, I think that is more the deterrent than locking people up. And of course, locking people up is really expensive. And if we can do a better job of distinguishing between the people we're angry at from the people we're just afraid of, then I think that steps a long way, or takes us a long way, into addressing crime and getting bad people off the streets while not locking up every person and incurring that cost. So it's good to see that the people of Missouri kind of understand that as well. And I'm hopeful that we can, steer more resources into policing and into clearing those cases. That's really important. As far as crime in Kansas City and St. Louis, you're absolutely right. The numbers are heading in the right direction. What I'm trying to figure out is why. And it's not clear in either city that we know why. And as you can imagine, that's hugely important because we want to make decisions going forward that reflect the best practices, not just say, gosh, crime is down for some reason, and let's keep doing what we've been doing, because we know some of the things we've been doing just aren't working.
Well, Melissa Johnson, who's the new Jackson County prosecutor, there was a report last week that case filing rates climbed to 73%. Conviction rates reached nearly 70%. That's an 8% increase over 2024. Do you think that those are worthy of noting and attributing to the reasons?
Yes, I think exactly for what we talked about. People who are committing crimes need to be confident that there are going to be repercussions. Oftentimes, and conservatives, Republicans in the 80s and 90s were guilty of this, we just focused on severe punishment. And the lock them up, throw away the key type stuff. But without confidence that you're going to be caught in the first place, a severe punishment doesn't really work. So yes, I think more prosecutions, more successful prosecutions, clearing cases, arresting the bad guys, that's very important. And if Jackson County and St. Louis County and City are doing a better job of it, that is all welcome.
And let's be honest, Patrick, none of this is rocket science. None of it. It's understanding human nature, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. It's understanding human nature and making sure people who may commit a crime feel like there's a decent chance they will get caught. I mean, it's like you or I speeding down the street. If I think there's a cop outside of my neighborhood, guess what? I'm not going to go 10 miles over the speed limit. I learned that the hard way 2 months ago.
Well, you're exactly right. It does seem very basic. Unfortunately, over the last number of decades, we've gotten distracted into talking about root causes and social ills, and all those things are important. But, when, I'm forgetting his name now, the attorney general from the first Trump administration came into Kansas City, when asked about those social causes, he said, look, we can't clear that up until we get the blood off the streets. We've got to lock up these bad guys first. That's the first order of public safety. Maybe at some point in the future we can address those. And there are some really promising approaches to that type of stuff. But the first thing we've got to do is stop the bleeding, get the bad guys off the street, and do a better job of prosecuting them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, I think it was, would that have been Bill Barr when he was here during 2020?
Yes, for Operation Legend. Yes, it was Bill Barr. Thank you.
Yes. No, yeah, Bill Barr. He did a good job with that Operation Legend, and so did KCPD and everybody else. So what did you hear, by the way, from Mike Kehoe yesterday, the governor of Missouri in his State of the State? What stood out to you?
So I am becoming cynical in my old age, and a lot of times these State of the State or State of the City speeches are just fluff, and there isn't a lot you can draw from them. But I think Kehoe maybe did a better job than most. He made the point that Missouri is stagnant in its population. You know, a few years ago, we actually lost a congressional seat because other states are growing faster than Missouri. And he made the point that we've got to be much more competitive, and that was welcome. And he talked about cutting the income tax, and again, that is welcome, but he also focused on cutting spending. And that is hugely important. We can't just cut revenue and hope that everything works out. And so he challenged the legislature not just to cut the growth of spending, but to actually go back and cut the core. And I was glad that he talked about how in the past few years, and he didn't mention Governor Parson by name, but Governor Parson is a great contributor to the growth of the Missouri budget over the past few years. He said, look, we can't count on, you know, a government funding COVID money. We've got to step up and do the real work of cutting spending. So that was welcome. That was something I heard that I'm not used to hearing.
Well, you know, here's the problem. All these states, even red states, have these issues. I mean, Missouri has it. They had an $8 billion surplus that's dwindling rapidly because they all got this COVID money, right? Kansas, same thing. I mean, Kansas will brag about this surplus of $3 billion. That surplus is shrinking very quickly. Spending is exceeding revenue in Kansas and Missouri. And I saw some reports the other day that Kansas could become deficit by fiscal year 2028 or 2029. So all of these states, red and blue, are spending more than they have. They got a lifeline during COVID. And what did they do? Republicans and Democrats, they overspent on their pet projects. So I like what you're saying and what Kehoe is saying about phasing out the income tax. But until any of these states get their spending back under control, I don't see any lane or avenue to make that happen.
You're exactly right. It's going to require an awful lot of difficult decisions in state legislatures in Kansas and in Missouri. And let me say, even some of these claims about surpluses are misleading because oftentimes they don't account for the long-term obligations, right? Healthcare, pensions of state workers that states have entered into.
Yeah.
They just kind of say, oh, we got a whole bunch of money. What do we spend it on? And too often, states spent it on taking on new obligations. For example, Missouri raised the pay of state employees. Well, that's not just a one-time commitment. You're now setting the bar for all future salary decisions. So you're absolutely right. States need to right themselves, and it's going to be difficult because, you know, again, it's easy to cut taxes. Everyone likes that. But cutting spending is something else entirely.
It is. It is. And, you know, they got their lifeline in 2020 and they just squandered it. You know, they weren't responsible with it. And now it looks like there's going to be some issues for these states over the next few years. It's, I think, one of the more underreported, under-discussed stories when you talk about state budgets all around the country. Last thing, on the other side of state line, I know you're a Missouri guy, but I had some fun with this morning. Laura Kelly, what she said yesterday about the Chiefs coming to Kansas, just real quick, take a listen.
We were able to accomplish this amazing feat for two reasons. First, we made Kansas a place the Chiefs want to call home. With a strong economy, a strong workforce, strong communities, and of course, an extraordinary fan base.
Patrick, the analogy I've used this morning is Laura Kelly and the Kansas politicians are the 80-year-old guy who's a billionaire who thinks that he has a 30-year-old girlfriend because she actually loves him.
Look, I heard you dragging Bill Belichick. Leave Bill alone. He's in love. He's happy.
He may be in love. That's not the point. Laura Kelly and the Kansas politicians are in love with the Chiefs. It doesn't mean they love them back or give a damn about them back. They're there because they got the biggest subsidy.
You're exactly right. And this is what the people of Missouri had to learn, or the legislature needs to learn, is that these teams don't love us. They talk about loving their fans and all that stuff. But these are all bottom line organizations. And again, God love them for it. But we should be a little bit more discerning in who we hop into relationships with.
Yeah, that's exactly right. By the way, if you think you're still the second most popular Patrick in Kansas City, you have gone down a couple of rungs because no one in this town defends Bill Belichick outside of you, apparently. So I don't know why you would do such a thing. But you know what? We're all entitled to our own opinion. That's what makes the world go round, Patrick.
Leave Bill alone.
Leave him alone. Sounds like a Patrick Touhey. You want to go the Belichick route one day? Is that your plan in life?
I'll take the money, and North Carolina is a beautiful state, so I don't see a downside right now.
All right. You left out an important piece of that, but I'll let it slide. Okay, man. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. Take care.
All right. Patrick Touhey, Show Me Institute on KCMO. What If Wednesday is coming up on 95.7 FM, always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app, the iHeart app, or just tell your Alexa or Google Home to play KCMO Talk Radio. It could not be easier. What If Wednesday? 3 questions as we wrap up the 8 o'clock hour coming up next.
On Wednesday's Guy Benson Show, our dear friend Riley Gaines on a major case before the Supreme Court on protecting women's sports, coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
All right, it's 8:49. We're back to kind of January weather here on a Wednesday morning on KCMO. I liked it yesterday. I said to the girls yesterday, I said, boy, today was beautiful, wasn't it? And then my oldest, she goes, it was cloudy. I'm like, okay, we got to understand 60 degrees in January is a good thing, and here's why. But I understand when you're a kid, you're not as in tune with like the month, what we should expect this time of year, and what we're getting.
Yeah, Dad, I remember when I was 4.
Yeah. I understand. So then I used it as a teaching moment. Here we go.
95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. It's time for What If Wednesday.
What if, instead of having you on this radio station, there was somebody else?
All right, John, what is on your rundown for What If Wednesday here?
What if a cap on credit card interest rates means an end to rewards programs?
That's not the thing that if I'm the credit card companies, I'm hanging my hat on. If I'm the credit card companies and I'm making the case against legislation that is being pushed by Kansas Senator Roger Marshall and President Trump and others who are trying to cap credit card interest rates, what I would do is I would simply say there will be people that we will not be able to give credit cards to that we currently give credit cards to. Making it about the rewards is to me kind of it's really a sucker's argument. Because, yes, as someone who uses a card and then just, pays it off. I mean, I love Dave Ramsey. I consider myself a Dave Ramsey guy, but I do have a card and it just gets paid off. And that's how we choose to do it. The points are just there. I don't think about them. I don't spend through the prism of how many points am I going to rack up when I buy this quarter pounder with cheese in honor of the President of the United States. Well, I'm going to rack up some points with this purchase. I don't think that's how they should be doing that because that's really appealing to, in many respects, people who can't do math. Points are just there. They're a little side bonus for you. It's not the reason anybody should make a decision on a purchase. So what they should do is say, hey, this is going to limit credit card access across the country. Do not make it about the rewards because that's not the most compelling argument on their side, John.
Seems like taxes. How can we give you your money back if we don't charge you more?
Yeah. Exactly right.
Okay, what if neighborhood nuisances go unchecked?
Well, then you get tragedies like what happened in the Northland yesterday or on Monday morning. This guy, Chris Wells, has had beef with this neighbor, as have other neighbors, Jeffrey King, for months now, if not years. And at 7:30 in the morning on Monday, 41-year-old Chris Wells, who leaves behind 4 young children, gets shot and killed by this neighbor, Jeffrey King, allegedly, over just a neighborhood dispute. Now, this is somebody who has been a nuisance in that Northland neighborhood for a long time. There have been dozens of 311 calls, according to reports, multiple calls to KCPD, and everybody just passed the buck. KCPD, according to Chris Wells' own Facebook post from July 11th of last year, said, I've got KCPD telling me to call 311. I've got 311 telling me to call KCPD. Everybody is pointing the finger, and everybody is giving me the runaround. And he's tagged Mayor Lucas in these posts and other people in city government, and they got nowhere. And then this guy, Jeffrey King, who, if you look at his house, I mean, the guy was clearly mentally disturbed. He's basically living out of his front yard. He had trailers and boats and trucks and chairs and tables. I mean, he had a sign outside of his house that said, show me your beehole. Like a flag on the side of a trailer in his driveway. This was not somebody who was well. And the local government let down its citizens here, let down this neighborhood, and let down the taxpayers. And I had some people text the show saying there was a lot going on behind the scenes. And it took you too long to do anything about it because now a father has lost his life. Don't tell me about what you were doing. Just do it. Get it done. Do the damn job. My gosh. The way that government moves, I know it's not intended to move quickly, but government has largely done this to itself as well. They move slower than they should because of their own actions and their own roadblocks they put in their own way. And now this guy, this father, has lost his life, and 4 young kids do not have their dad coming home anymore. And that in and of itself is a tragedy, John. What's next?
What if the Royals had moved in the outfield walls before last season?
Well, according to Mark, I mean, they'd look like the 27 Yankees.
Right?
Geez, murderer's row there. 4 players hitting 40 home runs. Had the outfield walls been last year what they're going to be this year?
Absolutely insane. And true.
That is wild. So the Royals are moving in their walls 8 to 10 feet from the foul pole out to left center and right center. I find it interesting that center field is staying at 410 feet. What's the theory on why that might be? They didn't hit a lot of balls to deep center field, and they like their defense in center field?
I believe it has something to do with the wind, actually.
Oh.
And the crown vision and everything like that. So they're just keeping that how it is.
Okay.
We got the fountains out there. Have you seen the rate plumbers are getting to move that thing?
I'm just waiting for them to now put like mixed use in between where the outfield wall was and where it's going to be, right? They could squeeze a couple condos in there to help pay the bills, I figure.
And
good for them.
Somebody would want to live there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, they could get some homeless people in there to, chime in or chip in a little bit, if nothing else. Okay. That's pretty crazy, though. 4 players would have 40 home runs. What was it? Maikel Garcia would hit 40 instead of 16 home runs?
Yeah, he would have had 24 more.
Wow. But you know what's going to happen this year, right? He's going to have like a total crap season. He's going to bat like 200.
Yeah.
He's going to have a total letdown, and now the other team's going to be the ones hitting all the home runs at the K. That's what's going to happen.
It could happen.
Unintended consequences.
Well, someone said on the text line, wait, Pete, this means the other teams are going to be able to hit home runs easily, too.
Unless they're retractable per half inning.
I was going to say, imagine if they do retractable outfield walls every half inning.
What a great deal.
Man, that would be great. Rob Manfred, take a clue.
The Royals do have really good pitching, so maybe they're just banking on that.
Well, I think they are. I think you're right about
Could
that.
have a coin flip before the game like football, but it would be for the outfield wall distance.
Yeah.
Let's flip the coin, see.
Who gets 379 in left center and who gets 389 in left center? Oh, that's great. Hey, baseball needs a little spice right now. That's not a bad idea. I think we've solved the sport here in the last 90 seconds. Scott Faughn is with the Missouri Times. He knows the lay of the land in Jeff City as well as anybody. And we'll get to the nuts and bolts, but what's he also hearing about the Chiefs in the wake of that loss? He will join us next on KCMO. I want to get a lay of the land from our buddy Scott Faughn. He is with the Missouri Times, publisher there. He's going to join us on KCMO Talk Radio momentarily as we talk to you as well at 913-408-7957. Before we get to the nuts and bolts, I have not talked to Scott Faughn since the whole Chiefs deal went down. And, of course, they went from Missouri to Kansas. So, Scott, what is your read on where the governor is with the Chiefs leaving, where the legislature is on this deal, and what ultimately it means for the state of Missouri?
A lot of emotion, a lot of frustration. Let's break this down. For the governor, this is his first loss. I don't know that I've ever seen a politician flying as high and enjoying as much success as Mike Kehoe. You're going to have a honeymoon. That's expected. He's had an amazing honeymoon. This is the first thing that didn't go his way. I'll say this. They're in Jefferson City in the Republican Party, your right-wing kind of folks always criticize everything. They're always mad. But your folks that get things done, Republicans, they were all mad, all disappointed. But then the pragmatic politics of it starts. This is a very tough vote for a Republican. It's a tough vote for a Democrat now, too, but it's very, very hard for a Republican to vote for stadium subsidies. And there are some folks that are a little put out that we didn't have a deal in place before they were asked to vote on this. And I think that's a very legitimate concern. I think it's hard to argue that, probably this is the last thing they should have done.
Because they go to the special session, in the fall of last year, and they vote on this subsidy for the Chiefs and the Royals to stay in the state of Missouri. And what you're saying is that the politicians are now ticked off that basically they didn't have a deal with the Chiefs done that said, if we do this, you guys will commit to the state of Missouri. That's what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. There are folks. It's still a quiet grumble because most of your typical Kehoe critics did not vote for this. Let's keep in mind.
Yeah.
They're the folks that this is the kind of thing they don't vote for, even if you lean on them, which, frankly, you look pretty smart today. Look, there's a lot of finger pointing at Jackson County. I think that there is clearly the people of Jackson County feel their county government's dysfunctional. They removed a local legend in a recall effort. That's about as you can take my opinions on whatever you like, but that's pretty legit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of finger pointing there. There's some, I think, there's some folks ticked off that they got put in the position. I think there's some folks that feel like the Chiefs maybe didn't deal above board. And then here's the practical part. Nobody wants to lose to Kansas. It's a big deal. It can't, but privately, as the dust has settled, I had John Patterson on my TV show. He was very open. We could not match that. That is not something we couldn't have passed it. And he said we probably shouldn't have passed it. It was incredibly, incredibly generous what the state of Kansas was willing to offer. And he believes the state couldn't match that, and they probably shouldn't match that. They felt like they went to the very, very end of what they could justifiably do, and Kansas came in and literally doubled it. So I don't know. And there was no way in Missouri you weren't going to get folks to do this huge tax district. The taxing district for the Truman Sports Complex might have included a blocks adjoining it, but you were never going to get them to cut up a third of Jackson County and maybe go into Clay County, and the taxing district just wasn't going to work. They wouldn't have done that. So I think the dysfunction, I think also the incompetence of that election campaign, just not even the people that ran it, just the whole thing was a mess. So yeah, there's a lot of upset, disappointment, and where I think you'll see this matter is, how does Governor Kehoe rally from a loss? We've never seen that because he's never lost anything. So now we're going to see how he responds and his team respond. And then I think you're going to have people that the next time they're asked to vote on one of these big things, whether it be for a major employer, sports team, whatever, I think they're going to have some more questions. And I honestly don't think that's a bad thing.
I don't either. I don't think it's a bad thing either.
More questions is good.
So it feels like the loss really feels like an emotional one over anything else, because as you said, whatever your opinions are, and I've made mine clear on how the math is going to work or not work in Kansas. The offer was more generous, to use your word. I may use the word irresponsible, but neither here nor there. The Chiefs took the better
Can you bring
deal.
a hopper up here by chance? I think the Chiefs are a business, and we all love them, and they've been on this amazing run. Let's not kid ourselves. Clark's a businessman. The governments were giving out money, and Kansas was giving out a bigger pile, and he took the bigger pile. Frankly, if I had no emotional attachment to the area, if you and I own the Minnesota Vikings and we got more money to move it to Madison, Wisconsin, and we didn't care about the community, sure, why would we not? I mean, it's a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like I am a Chiefs fan, but I have like a degenerative problem with the Cardinals. I'm obsessed. It is not healthy. And I would say give them all the money. Now, the funny part of this, as a person who's on the other side of the 85 World Series, is you have the Royals. Everybody voted for this for the Chiefs. Let's just not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
Honestly, baseball is a better deal business-wise because you have 81 home games. I actually believe for not just the Royals, for small market teams, it's going to, after the strike or the lockout, whatever happens after the season, I personally believe you're going to see a lot of these small market teams are going to be better investments. They're going to be more competitive. You know, a new stadium that's built as time for the new labor negotiations, the new economics of baseball kick in. It could be a good time to own the Royals, but let's be honest, nobody wants the Royals. Kansas didn't want the Royals. Missouri, I mean, they want the Royals, but do they want to give them what Missouri still considers a very generous subsidy? No, they don't want to do that. So it's sort of you're kissing your sister now. I mean, you're going to give subsidies to a team that, if we're just being candid, if we're talking math, does not have that many fans that come to the games. Now, again, I laid out a thing where I truly believe there is a time where not just the Royals, but all these small market teams are going to have a better way to go. It's going to be more equitable probably when this is done. But as of today, there is not a great deal of excitement to rubber stamp a bunch of subsidies for the Royals.
But the offer is still out there. They're not reneging on the offer, even though the offer was, like you said, really built for the Chiefs.
It's in state statute.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be an effort to repeal it. I don't think that'll work.
Okay.
Also, I mean, you've got the Cardinals out there who probably will take advantage of this at some point. And the legislature probably would be like less mad about that. But also you have to deal with St. Louis. If you think Jackson County is dysfunctional, brother, get in the truck and drive 3.5 hours east. You want to see dysfunction. Anything in St. Louis is just a dumpster fire. So,
yeah,
I think probably Jackson County gets it together and probably keeps the Royals. And I think there are economic factors bigger than any one team that's going to make that a better investment as time goes by. But when the Cardinals go to do this, you'll have more people will choke that down because they love the team on an emotional level. But you watch, St. Louis will make a nightmare of it. They always do. They always do.
Scott Faughn, Missouri Times publisher, is here on KCMO, knows the inner workings of Jeff City as well as anybody. So then yesterday, State of the State, the big headline that I took out of it was obviously, and this is not a secret, that Mike Kehoe has been wanting to get the income tax down to zero in Missouri and be on par with Texas and Florida and Wyoming and some of these other states. But he also wants to see $600 million in cuts. They do not really have much of a surplus anymore, as I understand it. So how's he going to make that happen? How's the math work?
I think it's important to remember you couldn't have a surplus. The federal government sent you billions of dollars. Some folks said the budget increased. Well, I guess technically right, but that's totally a game.
Yeah, it's the COVID money they all got.
The fact of the matter is, you had to spend this money, and it had to be on the books by 27, and it had to be off the books by 31. So that I mean, some of this is numbers games that people use that and they know they're being dishonest and they don't care. The fact is, Missouri has cut taxes and they have not cut spending yet. The economy has grown. The ARPA money. I mean, look, there's a real benefit to I-70 in the economy. Just the money being spent, it turns over income tax, sales tax, hotel rooms, concrete, rebar. There's some benefits from that's going to go forward, not just the economic development of I-70, but the actual jobs that on that money that's spent. I think, Mike Kehoe wants to cut income tax. That's what he wants to do. I think we as a party, I've always been a Republican. Some days I'm more proud of that than others. The fact is we went from 6 to 4. I sat in the legislature and heard politicians make projections and promises. If we cut our income tax from 6 to 4, we will grow jobs. We'll grow GDP. We will grow population. Pete, I hate to say this. My entire life has been tax cuts. Yes. Let's be honest, though. If we're talking math here, it hasn't worked. None of the projections of going from 6 to 4 have worked. Now, I trust Mike Kehoe knows business. Mike Kehoe grew up as poor as church mouse, built himself up and started washing cars at Dave Sinclair. Now he owned dealerships. I have been to Walnut Park where he grew up. It is the ghetto of ghettos. It is his story is the American dream. So I trust that he knows more about business than most people.
Mm-hmm.
He has a better business resume than any governor since Governor Stark. And I'm not even sure it's close. So if he says, I need this to go into business and convince him to come to Missouri, I've yet to see his critic that's created more jobs than him. So I trust him in the extent that I trust Mike Kehoe. But Pete, I hate to say this. This is against my every inclination. Man, show me where the tax cuts have worked. What prognostication on the positive side has come in off the tax cuts?
And those have all come in the last few years, right? I mean, listen, I'm a fan of them like you are, but, and I was talking about this early this morning, a big business or any business is not going to see Missouri drop its tax rate 0.5% and be like, I am upending hundreds of jobs from California or New York or Illinois to Missouri tomorrow. Like, they've got leases, they've got operations, they've got to figure out how to move these things around. So doesn't it probably take several years, if not decades, to really get a gauge for whether or not any of this works?
It started in 2014.
Okay, so it has been that long.
I didn't have any gray hair in 2014.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Again,
that's fair.
It's dropped a 1/10% as revenue triggers kicked in. They all haven't kicked in yet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, in adult land, in Facebook land, you may wag your wand and everything works. In adult land, it is slow. I'm just saying, I think this is where the state's going.
Yeah.
It fits with everything I've ever thought in my whole adult life since I've cared about politics. But I mean, I think we're going as a party, folks are going to have to start showing the results.
Yeah.
I mean, we are the show me state.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I asked Mike Kehoe's the guest on This Week in Missouri Politics on Sunday. And I was like, you're telling the people of this state that if you get this Path to Zero passed, you can go sell people on moving jobs here. And he said he could. And I mean, there's no reason you don't trust Mike Kehoe's word.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest too. And I don't know what the state can do about this, but when your two biggest cities or three of your biggest cities, including Springfield, have some of the highest homicide rates in the country on a per capita basis, you got problems.
I think it's a global fix. And the truth is, solving crime in a major city is something that is the track record of success on that is worse than these tax cuts.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get there.
Yeah.
I've never seen a credible person tell me that. Now you can move crime around.
Mm-hmm.
You can chase crime around an area, but I mean, they solve crime in New Orleans in large part, but the poorest areas are going to have crime. That's true in every city. The poorest area is flooded, and they bulldozed the houses and didn't let people move back and climb it down in New Orleans. In New York, they did stop and frisk and stuff that, frankly, I'm not sure you should do to an American citizen. I don't know the government has the right to stop you and frisk you. I understand why, and it worked. Let's be honest. I don't know that people should. I don't know that I want to come to Kansas City and have the armed police officers, agents of the government, stop and frisk me for no reason.
I saw you getting stopped and frisked at the Lowe's Hotel. They were like, "This guy looks way out of place." Let's see what he's got.
They were right.
Yeah, they were right. Oh, man. All right, Scott Faughn. I really appreciate it. Legislative session's underway. We'll talk to you plenty here in the months ahead.
Hey, hat tip to you on this stadium story, man. You have been the go-to person, the person in the know, the Twitter account. When I want the info on this, hat tip to you and your team, man. I in the news business, I respect someone who owns a story, and you've owned the stadium story from the beginning, and it's been fun to watch.
Well, that's very nice of you. Thank you very much to Scott Faughn. And I would say the KCMO team obviously has been a part of that. I mean, Keatsman's had a lot on this as well. He gets a lot of credit for his sources on the Kansas side who, gave this audience outstanding stuff. But I just think that you combine the information that this radio station provided on a local level, combined with our ability to then talk to you about it, which obviously few other formats are able to do. Certainly TV can't, newspaper can't. And that's where I think that we've definitely, to Scott's point, as a group, as a unit, owned this story. So nice of him and good guy, and we'll see how it plays out down there in Jeff City. 913-408-7957. You want to jump in? We've had a lot of guests over the last hour. We'll do that with you coming up on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Streaming, as always, on the iHeart TuneIn and KCMO Talk Radio apps.
from Leawood to Liberty. You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio.
Victor is in Parkville. He's checking in on KCMO. What's up, Vic?
How you doing this morning? You know, I just wanted to touch a little bit on what Patrick Touhey was talking about funding, taxing, spending, that kind of stuff in Jeff City, and just around basically. This is kind of indicative of Missouri schizophrenic voters and American voters in general. You know, we want better representation, but we reelect the same people in political parties. We want lower taxes, but yet we want to increase funding for failing schools. We need jails, but we vote for NGO social programs. We want crime controlled, but we don't support law enforcement. You know, until the voter starts educating themselves and voting their true values, not this touchy-feely stuff, but your true values, we're going to be stuck with the status quo. And that's just the way it is. And about the only way we're going to be able to fix it, and I hate to say it, but the Republican Party in Jeff City is dysfunctional. I've talked to the state reps, and what happens there is just freaking ridiculous. Until we close the primaries and we move the bond and mill and school board elections from April to November, we're kind of screwed. Nothing's going to change.
Well, you're good ideas on what needs to change, Victor. I mean, I totally agree with you. Moving those elections to November is a good place to start. Makes all the sense in the world. Money's still a big part of it. Yes, there's an establishment in both state houses in Topeka and Jeff City. That's absolutely right. So you bring up some fair criticisms and good points. But I will say, whether or not Mike Kehoe was your guy in the primary, he's a serious dude. He's had private sector success. I think he's a major upgrade from Mike Parson. And I think if the state is going to have any major legislative success, Mike Kehoe is the guy to do it. I was at Hy-Vee over the weekend with the girls. They love looking at the, cookies, getting the cheese, the whole deal. We have a great time. And sometimes I go in with them. Sometimes I'm like, I don't have time. And that's where the Hy-Vee Perks card can help out in a big way. You can get the free Hy-Vee Perks membership, like the exclusive members-only pricing and digital coupons, or upgrade to Perks Plus and get free delivery. They'll bring the groceries right to your house. Download the Hy-Vee app or go to Hy-Vee.com/perks and get saving today.
On Wednesday's Guy Benson Show, our dear friend Riley Gaines on a major case before the Supreme Court on protecting women's sports, coming up at 2 o'clock on KCMO.
All right, let's talk about Emmanuel Cleaver. Of course, Cleaver was up in arms, and you had local news running this story. Headlines last night all across Kansas City. Emmanuel Cleaver wrote a letter to Secretary Noem that I'm sure she promptly threw in the garbage. Does anyone think that Kristi Noem actually read a letter from Emmanuel Cleaver yesterday? Or do you think that Cleaver put a letter together to then virtue signal to the media in Kansas City as like, I'm standing up for Kansas City. What's this about? Well, he's upset about the fact that there may be an ICE detention facility coming to Kansas City. And Cleaver said here in this letter to Kristi Noem, while we believe strongly in an orderly immigration system, I mean, you got to be kidding. What planet is Emmanuel Cleaver living on where he can write that sentence? Or his staffer, let's be honest, can write that sentence. Where Emmanuel Cleaver can put in a letter that we believe in an orderly immigration system. When regardless of what you thought of Joe Biden as president and whether you voted for him or not, if there's one thing that Joe Biden did not care about, and as a result, the entire Democratic Party didn't care about, it was an orderly immigration system. There has never been a larger abuse of the immigration system than Joe Biden's 4 years in office.
Come on, man.
It's a fact. So Cleaver, right out of the gates, is completely rewriting history and thinks that we all had, I guess, amnesia from 2021 to 2025, and says Kansas Cityans and I do not want to see the stench of these extreme mass deportation policies centralized in Kansas City. Now, to be clear, the stench was the immigration policy under the last guy. That was the stench. We now have to clean up the stench of having really bad actors with really bad intentions, whether it's in Kansas City, Minneapolis, or anywhere else. And then you have to have somewhere for them to be detained. Cleaver went on to say here in this letter that, in his opinion, these are not warehouses. These are detention facilities. Oh, excuse me. That is a statement from DHS. After Emmanuel Cleaver made it seem like, we're going to be treating people like cattle, is part of what he said also in his letter. DHS said in response, these are not warehouses, these are detention facilities. Every day, DHS is conducting law enforcement activities across the country to keep Americans safe. It should not come as news that ICE will be making arrests in states across the U.S. and is actively working to expand detention space. So that is the response from DHS to Emmanuel Cleaver's letter that was written yesterday to Kristi Noem. And with that, we will get to our caller of the day here on KCMO Talk Radio.
Hello? It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Dennis in Bonner Springs. What's up, Dennis?
Hey, Pete, I wanted to comment on your comment about what he wrote, supposedly, and your girls. Your girls have a little more reasoning skill at their young age than these interns that write this crap for these people. I mean, that's all it is. Like a local TV personality told me when we had an email exchange, I have people that are writing this stuff for me, and on a Friday, I don't have time to proofread it all, and you just proved to me that I should. These people, they're writing stuff. They have no reasoning skills. They're 22 years old, out of college. I mean, it's a joke. And these senators, these representatives, they don't check it out. They don't have time. They're too busy doing insider trading. And, well, I'm sorry, but we're laughing about it. But brother, look at it. I mean, you can't argue with it. Even you had to laugh. You didn't argue with me.
Well, I didn't know you were going to go there. But hey, that's why you got to get on board with the Nancy Pelosi stock tracker. You can track Pelosi's trades, and you'll be a millionaire by next year. There, D.
You're right. If I wasn't liquid because of my age.
Yeah, true. I understand.
My whole point is, It's just like these protesters, all this, the whole Democrat Party. How can you be against ICE? How can you be against making our country safer?
I agree with Dennis. And Emmanuel Cleaver, in his statement, in his letter to Kristi Noem yesterday, and this is in the wake of Department of Homeland Security reportedly planning to open up an ICE detention center here in Kansas City, Missouri. Emmanuel Cleaver goes on to say here, the proposed plan will degrade our society, divide our communities, waste taxpayer dollars, and stress the civility of our institutions to the point of fracture. Why would that happen? You've got some terrible people who ICE has arrested. Most of the people that have been arrested are people who not just are here illegally, but also are here and have committed really, really heinous crimes. Not all of them. Some of them are just here illegally, but still, that's breaking a law, right? That's breaking a law in this country. But a lot of them have horrible, horrible track records here in the United States or in the countries that they came from, or both in some cases. How is that degrading society to remove those people from civilized society and then eventually from the country? How is that dividing communities? How is that wasting taxpayer dollars? That's like a core tenet of what taxpayer dollars should be spent on, safety and security. And how is that stressing the civility of our institutions? By the way, where do most of these really bad actors hang out? They're not hanging out in Prairie Village. They're not hanging out in Leawood. They're hanging out in lower middle class to poor neighborhoods, whether it's in Kansas City or anywhere else. That's where they're hanging out. That's where they're doing business. That's where they're committing crimes. That's where they're causing chaos. And Emmanuel Cleaver has plenty of those in his district. And he's turned his back on all those people in the name of politics, in the name of appeasing a handful of woke Karens in Waldo. When if you ask regular people about this, when you ask working stiffs about this, you ask people in poor neighborhoods about this. Do you want these people terrorizing your neighborhoods? The answer overwhelmingly is going to be no. But Emmanuel Cleaver is just stuck playing the national political game and appeasing to a base that is not in touch with reality. But for Emmanuel Cleaver, that's nothing new. He has not been in touch with reality for a very long time.
You mustard moo.
And that's why, barring something unforeseen, he's done next year anyway. With the redistricting in place, I mean, we're not going to have to get any more of these statements from Emmanuel Cleaver. After the news yesterday that ICE or the Department of Homeland Security is considering opening up an ICE detention center in Kansas City, Missouri. So we'll see how this plays out, what exactly this means going forward. But obviously, it's a big deal. It's a huge development. And what we know right now, according to the report, is that DHS intends to build several detention centers across the country to hold approximately 80,000 illegals. DHS recently awarded a $30 million no-bid contract to an organization that, according to Emmanuel Cleaver's office, had no previous history of government contracts to facilitate the plan. Now, whether or not there's some shadiness there, I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out more on that deal. I never liked no-bid stuff from the government. I'll readily admit that. But that's really a very minor sidebar to what this story is actually about. We'll wrap up the show. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on a Wednesday morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. Streaming as always on the app. And we do have some butter drama at the top restaurant in Kansas City we'll touch on next.
Hey, it's Vince Gallane's Catch My News show at 11 o'clock after Kevin Keatsman on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
All right, just some quick breaking news here I want to mention. The Supreme Court has delayed the tariff ruling once again. That's the second time that they've delayed their ruling on whether or not President Trump's tariffs are constitutional. I don't know my gut tells me that this could now get delayed to June. And the longer they wait, the better that is for the administration. Because you get more revenue collected, messier refunds, businesses already adapted. So I don't know. I wonder if the Supreme Court is basically trying to kick this can down the road. And then by the time they get to June, they make a ruling that is in part driven by the fact that, hey, it's too big of a mess. There's nothing we can do. We're going to let it go forward, and time is part of the reason for that. Because the one thing that Trump has made very clear, and he's not wrong on this, regardless of what you think of the tariffs, some kind of refund process would be a disaster. And the one thing I still want to see on this is just go reciprocal. That's it on everything. And then Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, he was on this morning on the Fox News Rundown in the 5 a.m. hour. I'm a huge fan of that guy. He's great. Love his style, love his personality, love the way he talks. Obviously, brilliant businessman. And the one thing that he was critical on the tariffs is he goes, what the administration can do tomorrow, it'll take them an hour to do this, is remove the tariffs from things that we are never going to produce here. Right? Like the car companies are mad because we just don't produce aluminum, and we never will produce aluminum at the rate that we need for vehicles and all these other things. So on the things that we're never going to produce, bananas. Like, yeah, we have bananas, but we're never going to produce bananas at the rate we need to feed our country with the amount of banana consumption that we have. And my daughters alone, I feel like they eat half the bananas in Kansas City. It's crazy. So he's like, if they just remove the tariffs on the things that we're never going to produce in this country, and then go reciprocal across the board, boom, you're good. But now we got to wait to see what the Supreme Court does with all this. And now they may just be waiting till midsummer to have some kind of answer. Let's go to Jay. He's in Gladstone. We were just talking about Emmanuel Cleaver. He's mad that DHS is considering an ICE detention facility in Kansas City, Missouri. Jay, good morning.
Yes, good morning. I think Kansas City could come out well with this. I hear there's some property that over there by 435 and 70 that we're looking for a use for.
Maybe the Arrowhead finally gets its roof.
Right? And and I'm happy from Clay County. I'm happy that they're going over to the other side of the border there because I don't want to pay for them. So this is fantastic.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a win when it comes to that issue on the Missouri side. But that, you know what? Might not be a bad idea. You have the ICE detention facility out there at the old Truman Sports Complex. Although they need that thing up and running. Here's the problem. Trump wants that thing up and running soon. They don't want to wait till 2031. So if I'm finding a hole in your argument, that's what it is.
Yeah, I see your point, and you're right. But, maybe we can make a temporary one like they had out in Arizona with the tents and the pink underwear. And then, that gives us time to spin it up to a full-fledged facility.
Hey, I'm all about thinking outside the box here, Jay.
Take care, Pete.
You're a patriot, and you're thinking about your country and putting it first. I missed the detention facility in Arizona with the pink underwear. I don't know what that was a dream of Jay's or what that was.
Yeah.
Jay might have woken up to that one. I don't know. I'm not
missed it.
I missed it. I can't catch every story, but I know what I'm going to be Googling after the show. But I'll do that on my phone, not on the work computer, because I don't want to know where that leads to. If I Google detention facility, Arizona, pink underwear, I don't want to know what that shows up, and I will not do it on the work computer because that is asking for trouble. So I'll do that on my phone after the show. But now you got something for me to do here when I'm done, Jay. Thank you very much for that. Oh, my gosh. As we put a bow on the show, J.J. Piccolo, Royals general manager, talked yesterday about the fact that they are moving the fences in at the K, about 10 feet from the foul line to left center and right center. Center field itself will stay at 410 feet. Here was J.J. Piccolo yesterday.
We just want a fair ballpark. We're not looking for something that it becomes really offensive and every ball that goes up in the air becomes a home run. We want it to be very fair. So when our players are playing at home, when they're playing on the road, it's the same approach. It's still going to be one of the bigger ballparks in the game. We're going to pitch, we're going to play defense, we're going to run the bases, we're going to situational hit. We're going to emphasize the exciting part of the games, the fearlessness, the aggressiveness. So none of that's going to change. All right, this is still going to be a very fair ballpark. It's not going to be pop-ups that go up and go out. You're going to have to hit them to get them out. So that's why we're very confident that we won't need to make any further changes.
All right. So here's the beauty of this, and I do not know the answer to this. I want to know what this costs because it makes me wonder if teams could actually just move in and then move out their fences every season based on how they build their team. And why wouldn't that become part of the game of baseball? If you have a team that, as Mark noted this morning, based on the advanced analytics, would have had 4 guys that hit 40 home runs last year, and they're back on the team this year, if you had the fences in where they're going to be at this season, why would you not basically move your fences in or out based on the team that you built for the upcoming season? Now, I understand you can't move them back necessarily beyond, whatever the maximum is. You don't want to have, what was that? I'm sure Kevin or John will know. Was it the Tigers' old stadium that was like 500 feet to deep center? I remember playing Ken Griffey Jr.'s Major League Baseball in Nintendo 64 back in the late 90s. And there was one of those ballparks, I think it was the old Tigers ballpark, that was just, cavernous.
I think 490, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it the Tigers'
I
old
think it was
ballpark?
Tigers.
Comerica Park or something like that? It's coming back to me now. So you can't really do that, but can you basically move fences in and out every year? I don't know the cost of it, but if it wins you a bunch of games and it gets you guys that are hitting 40 home runs a year and you're driving people to the ballpark, you're making that money and then, 10, 20, 50x that, John.
Well, you've got zoning requests to go through there between Raytown and Independence and Missouri Highway Patrol.
You got to build. You got to deal with
transportation.
Yes. City Hall. Mario Vasquez is going to have something to say about that, right? All the red tape there. Oh, my gosh. That's a good point. But I think it makes all the sense in the world. I'm a fan of it.
I just looked it up. The original Braves field had a 520-foot right center field wall.
520 in right center?
Right center.
What was left
Braves
center?
Stadium.
I guess it's a good thing that Hank Aaron was right-handed. Because if he was left-handed, he would have hit half the amount of home runs. 520. Man, that's wild. Absolutely wild. All right, Keatsman Uncanceled is coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. We are back tomorrow morning at 6. We'll talk to you then.